Our main character, he was just an ordinary boy on Earth, secretly helping strangers in small ways, hiding his kindness like a hero in the shadows. Then Truck-kun struck again, ending everything in the blink of an eye when he opened his eyes, not in a hospital, but in front of a goddess who called herself Hersha. She praised his pure heart and offered him a new life in a world of swords and magic. He had just one request for her: to become unimaginably powerful but live like an ordinary person without anything remarkable. She agreed, but with a brutal condition. If anyone discovered his power, his heart would explode. Reborn as Urion, he grew up in an orphanage. Where survival meant enduring the cruelty of the director and the indifference of the world, he kept his head down, playing the role of the weakest boy and protecting his secret. Only his sister Ella brought warmth to his life, sharing her meager food and shielding him from abuse. When the director revealed plans to sacrifice Urion to the wolf god, Ella stepped up, cutting her hair and disguising herself to take his place. He was ready to face death to escape when the director choked her and bragged about the atrocities he had committed. Urion could no longer hold back. Ignoring the goddess's warning, he struck with a devastating blow, and the monster's head vanished. After all, he saved Ella and broke free from the orphanage's chains, and in that moment, he discovered the loophole. If no one realized he had used his power, his heart wouldn't explode. 4 years passed, and the little boy now faced a bizarre entity, and although the presence of this creature could give people nightmares, for days, the boy simply stared at him with wide eyes. At first, it seemed like Urion was very scared of the creature's face, but what he was truly worried about was that he had forgotten to drink his favorite milk, which really bothered him since he hadn't grown much in the past 4 years. The giant creature didn't care about the boy's height issue. It tried to seize the moment by attacking him, but before the battle could start, everything ended in just one punch. Urion had knocked off the monster's upper half, showing he had the potential to become a hero with the next punch. The creature's head lay flat on the ground. Urion excitedly wondered if eating antlers would help him in his journey to become stronger. Things hadn't changed much, at least regarding his power and status, in the next scene. We see Ella growing up in a fitting uniform next to the boy. They had reached the age to take the entrance exam for the Magic Academy, and finally, the one guiding them was senior sister Arlen, the kind woman who had nurtured and sheltered the group after the director's tragic death among the 4 children. Ella and Urion would participate in the exams fully prepared. Senior sister Arlen was delighted for them, believing that God always has his reasons when taking a life. She thought it was for the greater good that the director died while these 2 children survived, and she hoped for a bright future ahead for them. Both Urion and Ella assured Arlen that they would pass the exam, remembering that dreadful place where the 4 kids swore to join the academy. Finally, they're about to make that dream come true. But there's even more to it. Our boy has waited for this moment his whole life. You see, he hasn't faced any hardships in the past 4 years, fighting against giant monsters, but everything is different now that he's joined the academy. Urion will finally live his dream of hiding his power from the academy's promising talents. He lives for this kind of life, where the main character is always looked down upon. This fills his heart with excitement as he joins the academy. Speaking of the Magic Academy, let's take a moment to explain the Royal Magic School, established by the royal family, which nurtures top talents. Regardless of their background or status, the school transforms those talents into promising heroes who can save people from the wrath of monsters. The Magic Academy's exam is happening today, so let's take a minute to look at some students from noble families. The blonde boy, Chris here, is proud of the academy living up to its status and name. He glances around to observe the room. He notices that most candidates have a blue emblem, indicating their nobility, until Chris spots a red pin. Stunned, he realizes he might be facing the princess of the royal family. The pressure begins to weigh on him, making Chris aware that this year's competition will be fierce. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to a group of commoners nearby. Chris sees both Ella and Urion, who seem quite clumsy and unaware of what they're doing. It's clear they don't come from a noble family. Allowing Chris a chance to look down on them, the blonde boy badmouths the commoners for being lowly and delusional for participating in the entrance exam. But it's not just him. Other nobles also quickly look down on their peers simply because of class differences. In fact, they are sure that both Ella and Urion will be the first to be eliminated from the exam and think the school must have a heart of charity for allowing them in. Now Ella seems quite discouraged by being judged, but Urion is having a wet dream right now. He's really happy that everyone is looking down on him, just as they should in any story involving a character hiding superior power. But with his sister, she's quite frustrated and turns to leave immediately. No longer wanting to hear the rude words of the nobles, Urion tries to stop her, but she strongly advises him not to listen to their advice as these kids value appearance and status above all else. In the end, our boy decides to follow her. Although he's enjoying the spectacle, let's quickly shift to the supervisor announcing the Academy's 29th entrance exam. The supervisor is none other than the head of the Royal Magic Academy, Sir Magus. He assures the candidates that the exam is very simple to understand with only one goal: to protect everyone using swords and magic in this way. Their basic understanding of swords and magic will be tested by how the nobles won't give Urion and Ella a break. They even look down on our boy while this announcement is happening. One of the Academy instructors, also known as Walmart Aizawa from My Hero Academia, explains that in the first test, they will use swords to slash the target behind their teacher. Ryumi dramatically showcases his point by easily cutting through a scarecrow. While flaunting his impeccable style, seeing him dismantle a scarecrow with just a piece of paper makes the candidate's hearts race. But that's enough for the show. The instructor begins the test by calling the first candidate's name. Tien is brought into the arena and is told to start as soon as she feels confident. The girl is anxious. She nervously asks if she'll be disqualified right away if she can't cut the scarecrow in one swing. Ryan B explains that won't happen since the instructors don't actually expect them to have certain skills. They even understand that these candidates are just a bunch of kids, so instead of trying to impress the instructors, Ryan B advises the candidate to just do her best. With that in mind, the girl takes a swing but doesn't really cut correctly. Not even halfway, Ryan B calls the next candidate, who is Chris, who managed to cut at least halfway. Just like Rishal, who also ends up with halfway. Finally, the name Ella is called as the girl hesitates to step up. Before the test, Urion gave her a final piece of advice to just aim to cut halfway through the scarecrow. She remembered his advice. Feeling confident facing the scarecrow, Ella's determined expression could be her confident display in front of the remaining nobles. They started arguing and bad-mouthing the farmers who enrolled instead of responding to their nasty remarks. This girl maintains a resolute look of determination, recalling her biggest failure 4 years ago when she couldn't protect her little brother. Fueled by emotion, she swings a perfect slash, cutting the scarecrow in half, leaving the instructor's mouth agape. Urion is truly proud of her. While all the haters quickly become her fans, to the point they want to borrow her sword for their own tests, the red-haired girl is really happy about this. She has found the motivation to protect Urion, who has always seemed pitifully weak in her eyes, really seeing through the instructor's perspective. She has found the motivation to protect Urion, who always appears pitifully weak in her eyes, really seeing it from the instructor's perspective. And seeing why he was shocked, Rayambi reflects that a magic wand has been intentionally set inside the scarecrow, meaning any candidate who dares to slash it with all their strength will be unable to cut the wand. The only way to slash the scarecrow is to imbue their magic into the weapon, enhancing it beyond normal capabilities. However, this type of technique is difficult, even for adults, let alone a girl doing it unconsciously. This simple test proves that Ella is truly impressive and talented for a candidate. This prompts the instructor to call the next candidate, the boy Urion. Stepping onto the stage, Urion gets ready to strike the puppet. The teacher is very surprised by Ella's performance, filling him with curiosity about her brother's skills. The golden moment arrives as Urion launches his slash, but disappointing everyone, the boy can't even touch the puppet's half. Taking advantage of this situation to mock the peasant, the nobles continue to slander, calling the boy a weak and pathetic child. Ryung also finds the boy ordinary compared to his sister, but as I mentioned before, Ryung secretly enjoys being looked down upon to the point of madness. Even now, Bro's face looks like he just defeated Goku or something. Starting with the next test, the candidates will compete in magical ability. For this, their instructor is a beautiful sorceress named Ji, and she tells them to use their wands to hit the target with magic. One candidate raises a significant objection. He can't use magic, but that's totally fine, because clearly, this tool can create water even without using magic. This means that each of them can use the tool to hit the target even if they lack magical ability. First on the list is the arrogant blonde boy Chris, confidently pointing the tool at the target, unleashing a perfect water vortex that hits the target. Chris receives all the praise from his friends for doing an excellent job, while GE tells him to return to his spot. Right after him is Urion's turn, eager to join in, but instead of handing him the wand right away, the arrogant noble drops and throws it to the ground, a look of superiority appearing on his face as he reminds the peasant that, as if he were on par with a noble. Hearing such harsh words, Urion looks shocked while his sister is terrified. The instructor warns the kids not to fight while our boy reaches for the tool and picks it up, once again displaying a strange masochistic expression on his face. He's very excited because Chris here has given him a chance to draw everyone's attention to himself without any further delay. The boy takes his position, filled with excitement about failing as planned. This way, he can assert himself as a character with hidden power in front of everyone forever, but in that brief moment, the boy makes a serious mistake. Urion is so caught up in his excitement that he puts too much power into the wand, releasing so much power that the wand shatters. The teacher is stunned, but most importantly, all the haters have been silenced in a simple display. A worried expression appeared on Urion's face as he realized he had just ruined everything for himself. By breaking the wand, the candidates were left speechless, including Urion's sister. The nobles couldn't comprehend how a tool could explode like that, especially when the one controlling it was just a farmer. The situation was chaotic for our boy, who wanted to keep his power a secret. It was lucky for him that his biggest hater, the blonde girl, had sunk deep into the river of denial, blaming the faulty tool, as there was no other way to accept what had happened after hearing Chris's accusations. Other noble kids began to support him, believing it could only be due to the tool experiencing fatigue with each use, causing it to malfunction over time. From shock, they turned back to mock him for being so bad that even the wand broke. Once again, our masochist boy was here craving this spectacle. Accepting every insult as a consolation for his heart, He also realized that the wand was too weak to contain even a fraction of his power. Everything would end up in the gutter for his potential power character. If all he did was expose himself right in the entrance exam, Urion intended to be more careful from now on, no matter what. With 2 tests completed, the Academy's principal announced the final details for the 3rd test. This time, they would be divided into teams of 3 to go into the forest and hunt the monster bear for its fang. The principal emphasized that while talent in swordsmanship and mana may shine individually, it means nothing if it's useless in a real fight against monsters. This test was designed to ensure candidates could prove themselves against a real threat. Looking back, Urion was just thinking about the monster hunting goal as his sister expressed great joy. Believing they were getting closer to achieving their dream, she had high hopes for their success, and Urion smiled at her. While nodding at her optimistic encouragement, the team formation took place. Clearly, the teams would be randomly selected based on the color of light emitted by their emblem. In Ella's case, the color was bright red, and lucky for him, Urion had the same color. Or at least that's what you think, because that's not Urion at all. The reality is, Ella would be spending time with the princess and another guy, instead of with her brother, while Chris was angrily stuck in the back for not being paired with the princess, instead of the other 2 farmers, while Urion was having a good time knowing that Ella was definitely paired with strong opponents. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about her safety. Even she seemed quite happy and ready to face the battle ahead. He waved goodbye to her with a cheerful smile. But the most surprising thing was that he wasn't paired with anyone at all. Even the other candidates avoided him like the plague, and thought you would be a lowly, terrible person, just as you started thinking you didn't have your own team. You heard 2 other candidates approaching you, and it turned out all 3 of them were not the same color. The boy with blue glasses was very happy to see you and even praised Urion for his performance. Michelle wanted to have fun with her new friend during the exam, and the girl was Tien, the same person who was called earlier in the swordsmanship test. Luckily, our guys finally found a team, and won't have to go alone. But that doesn't stop those with purple light from acting like they're the strongest. They bullied the farmers for gathering together in the same team. The comments seem to particularly affect Richarl because it's clear everyone knows he has failed the entrance exam 4 times already, making him the definition of a talentless guy. As for Tien, she is seen as a discarded noble with no allies by her side. In their eyes, this trio is pitiful and fits perfectly together. Urion looked at his teammates. Observing what was happening, he understood their sad expressions of failure and noticed the nobles mocking them. With a positive attitude, the young boy declared that they could always overcome and prove everyone wrong. His words lit up the expressions of his teammates, especially Rokiel, who smiled joyfully and radiated happiness while pointing out Urion's innocence. He admired our boy for being steadfast and unafraid even in the face of the nobles' petty mockery. At this moment, Rushel wanted to pass the exam, just to see Urion at the academy, so he hoped they would do their best in their test to succeed, although both were confident. Tien seemed worried about the results due to her failing the previous 2 tests. Things didn't look good for them. Urion took a second to realize what was happening, and suddenly, his soul shrank in fear, all this time hoping to hide his power. He tried his best. Although he may have succeeded in hiding his power, his test score would not reflect that. He was realizing that he was really in trouble and that his dream of entering the academy was in great danger. He didn't want to disappoint his sister, and found himself wavering, but Rachel was there to spark his confidence and believe they would get through everything. And thanks to previous efforts, he knew very well that even after failing the first 2 tests, a candidate could still pass if they succeeded in the final exam. The monster exam had the highest scoring criteria, meaning it would be the deciding factor on whether they passed or failed. This was good news for our boy. He finally had a chance to fix his mistakes and qualify for admission. But everything only sounds good in theory. In reality, as soon as they entered the forest, their plan fell apart. Thanks to the giant fire-breathing bear chasing them, all 3 were truly useless against this creature and couldn't help but run to safety. After escaping from the creature, Richard admitted that the monster was indeed as terrifying as rumored. As for Urion, he was disappointed. He understood that his goal was to defeat the monster, and that part was the easy part. Avoiding friends while hunting, even though it would be a headache for him, the poor boy had to think of a smarter approach. Although he could easily hunt hundreds of bears at once, Michelle began to lose confidence as she acknowledged that they were on the brink of failure. Unfortunately, he wouldn't have another chance if he failed this year's entrance exam, knowing that none of them could handle the failure. A clever person suggested they should target the bear's molars instead of trying to kill the creature. According to the description of the test, their task was to hunt the creature and retrieve the molar, but the problem was they couldn't meet the first criterion because they were extremely weak. However, the second requirement could definitely be fulfilled. A curious Urion asked if that was possible. This led Richal to explain his genius strategy, first hinting at the bear's fierce mouth, emphasizing that its teeth were always exposed. This meant they could easily aim for them, and with Richal's guidance, they could come back with the teeth without having to kill the bear. Clearly, Richal was absurdly confident in his strategy. Believing this year's hunting test was the easiest compared to all the others, he handed Tien a bag of deer blood, instructing her to spray it all over her body. It was a strange request, but not without reason. You see, Bear monsters are very sensitive to smell. That means if they could lure it with the smell of blood, they would make it act recklessly and ultimately destroy its own molars. As you can guess, the white-haired girl was definitely not thrilled with this plan, especially since she was a terrible runner compared to the others. But Richard really didn't care about that, believing his strategy would succeed even if she couldn't run properly. The whole situation felt suspicious, and it began to make the lady feel scared, especially when Rishal ominously hinted that the monster would be vulnerable while enjoying its meal, which was horrifying to imagine. Just as Rishal was about to open the bag of blood, our boy grabbed his arm and pulled him back, looking at him seriously. Urion was actually curious to know if this kid was crazy since he was openly planning to kill the TN here, while Rashal acted as if he hadn't done anything wrong. Because this way, both would qualify for the academy, freeing themselves. The nerd expressed that a sacrifice was necessary to achieve this goal. After all, they didn't have any other strategy to catch the bear, unless they did exactly as he said. Mitchell was very adamant in his stance, and using the lower class and his lack of mana as an excuse to kill someone. He strongly urged Urion to follow him and abandon the noble girl, and this way, they can simply pass the test at her expense. Furthermore, no one else will help her, especially since others have already given up on her. The title of a Forsaken Lady makes the lonely girl recall the harsh reality she faced in her family. Tian has always been labeled a failure who could never overcome. While Ricky is seen as a genius brother, she is constantly compared and unable to share the spotlight like Ricky, to the point where her name brings shame to the family. As she's dealing with that memory, Urion steps up powerfully to protect her, arguing that everyone shines when their moment comes, and this bookworm has no right to decide who deserves it or not. Angrily, Rashal goes insane, and spits blood on both their faces, believing they should die together. The strong smell of blood immediately attracting the fire-breathing monster. It lunges at them like a rocket to hunt them down. Tien fears they are about to meet their doom. Meanwhile, Urion simply looks at the bear with delight as a smile appears on his face. The lady glances at our boy, and realizes that Urion can't do anything because he's too weak, so in one final brave act, she takes on the role of defeating the monster alone. The terrifying bear lunges at the girl, who stands frozen in absolute fear. The same embarrassing words from her family echo in her mind, and to prove them wrong, Tien unleashes her magic, a windshield. This barrier is enough to block the bear's initial charge, as Tian finally asserts herself as a lady capable of more than just standing still. Summoning a wind sword, she then sends about 6 slashes toward the bear, completely confident in her victory. But her pathetic slashes leave no mark, not even a scratch on the monster's tough exterior. Even Urion is quite surprised by the creature's durability. Tien doesn't care and decides to use her magic against Urion to get him out of the dangerous spot, while the boy is grappling with what's happening. Tien warns him that she doesn't know how Urion will land after she sends him flying. At the same time, she thinks that causing him a bit of pain is better than letting him die here with her, to be honest. What a girl, she's really impressing me because she's not one of those save-me side characters you see every day. Tien waves her wand, creating a glow as she throws Urion into the sky. The boy's words become a warm memory in her mind. For the first time, someone encourages her and supports her in making a brave choice. However, what does that bravery mean? As she is now about to be obliterated by the bear's strike, Tien has given up all hope, and just as the creature's attack connects with her body, she faints just as Tien is about to fall to the ground. Urion returns to the scene at unimaginable speed and catches her, thrilled that she has finally discovered her own light. He laid her down on the ground, noting this was his perfect opportunity to fix everything, especially since Rashal had run away like a coward, leaving him without any witnesses around the bear's bloodbath. With the monster charging to attack the next target, Urion calmly waited, and just a second later, he delivered a powerful strike so devastating that it actually vaporized the creature's body. He truly said, "I'm not in danger. I am the danger." The monster groaned in pain as Urion declared his plan to gather the fangs. However, he was in a mischievous mood and wanted to play a prank on Rishal, but he didn't know where that bookworm had gone. Speaking of which, Rishal seemed to have gathered a bunch of kids together, all targeting Ella's group. Tien's brother wondered what these kids were trying to do, because normally they wouldn't draw weapons against others. One of the kids asked the farmer girl Ella to join their group, but of course, Tien's brother quickly reminded this clown group that the principal was the only one who could determine a student's potential to succeed or fail, and with the way they were acting, Ricky wondered how they would achieve that goal. The farmers seemed to have formed an alliance, and their strategy was to force the nobles to fail, allowing each of them a guaranteed spot to win. Ricky heard this strategy, and realized they wouldn't back down, as it was clear these lowly students had a grudge against the nobles for having treated them lightly. Of course, Ricky calmly didn't care and found it amusing that they thought bringing Ella to their side would ensure a chance to win in a sword fight against him. The kid mockingly corrected him, saying they had no plans to confront the nobles directly at all. In his foolish thirst for revenge, the farmer revealed their strategy was to lure the monsters here so they could take down the nobles piece by piece. Thanks to this guy ruining their plan, Ricky now had a clearer understanding of what was going on. He knew that the farmers participating in this year's exam were a larger group than last time, But it seemed all just to compensate for this complicated plan. The princess, with the magnificent red emblem, shared that these farmers knew about the bear's strong attraction to blood. She revealed her position as a member of the royal family, shocking the farmers with her words. In her eyes, it was unfair that students expected to become protectors one day were actually using cowardly methods to slaughter their own kind. Officially ordering, she directed Ricky to dismantle each of them and arrest them, and for the one who orchestrated this entire strategy, using the monster's characteristics to harm other students, that person would be thoroughly investigated by the royal family. Alright, so to summarize, Rushel was in trouble. Anyway, Ricky carried the spirit of Gojo into battle and drew his sword the moment he pulled it out. Dozens of slashes have been dealt, wiping out everyone in his path. The pathetic nerd realizes they're out of options. He decides to go all out with a blood strategy once again. 3 students try their best to soil Ricky's nice outfit, but before the blood can reach him, it's stopped by some kind of shield, while the swordsman simply looks at them with a please spare me expression. Rochelle's problems just keep getting worse. He can't understand why the blood is drying mid-air. The shield is actually created by the royal princess, who demands they surrender immediately. Calling their strategy a failure, witnessing the scene before her, Ella is completely astonished. She doesn't even need to lift a finger thanks to her talented teammates, while the nerd finds himself on the brink of collapse. Screaming that this is their last chance to pass the exam, he tries to motivate his subordinates that if they get caught here, it'll be the end for them. Rascal steps into self-destruction once again and cuts his hand to draw more blood. Other civilians follow his lead. Realizing there's nowhere left to run, witnessing the sad scene, the princess feels pity for them for trying so hard, the problem being the lingering smell of deer blood. It has attracted the attention of several bears. This is bad news as Ella sees at least 4 of these giant beasts approaching them. She has never encountered one of these monsters before, and now seeing its terrifying face, she wonders if they can cause harm. In front of such a monster, Ricky shows no fear like a strong boy and activates his wind blade ability to slash all 4 bears with his sword. It's truly an unbelievable sight, even for the nerd. Ella just can't comprehend what has happened and remains silent while Ricky assures them that their plan will never succeed. She begins to understand the boy in front of her better. This kid is on a completely different level compared to the others. Rachel and the other kids are captured and detained while Ricky starts interrogating him about Tien, knowing she has been grouped with him. The damn nerd breaks into a satisfied smile, realizing both brothers are involved in the test, which brings him great joy to announce the deaths of both Urion and Tien, mocking the difference in their levels compared to their brothers. In fact, the damn nerd even adds that the bear must be enjoying its meal right about now, causing Ella to fear for Urion, realizing the situation is very urgent. The princess wastes no time and orders Ricky to go save them while he still can. Poor Ella feels desperate and wants to leave, but the princess advises against it. Ella stops to question the princess's decision, and she expresses her viewpoint with the angriest glare. The problem is, the princess completely understands her position right now, knowing the feeling of losing a family member, but at the same time, she can't risk getting in Ricky's way. Anyway, Rochelle is here, enjoying herself like a satisfied clown. Unfortunately, if everything really happens the way that nerd describes, this whole place will turn into a mess, because the monsters will quickly be attracted by the scent of blood. There might even be dozens of bears lurking around that area, which is extremely dangerous. Oh, Ricky has a different kind of strength and can handle everything. This can't be said about Ella, who will need his protection and will ultimately get in his way. That's why the princess wants her to trust him right now, and stay put. The situation is unbearable, and disappointment looms over Urion's sister. But in the end, she decides to stay while Ricky cuts to a scene showing him running fast through the woods until he finally spots his sister. She seems to be unconscious with a jawbone in hand. Suddenly, Ricky sees someone and comes to a halt. It's him, but wearing a helmet. Urion is surprised that Rachel isn't picking up the jawbone, while Ricky quickly notices the child's black emblem. Then his gaze shifts to his unconscious sister. Jumping to conclusions, Ricky thinks this helmeted boy is the one who put his sister in this state. So in anger, he charges in with a sword slash while Yuri faces off against his sword. This completely shocks Ricky when his opponent manages to block his sword strike. The confident slash that had just severed bears a few minutes ago, this helmeted boy is here, telling him that a surprise attack is extremely dangerous, but all Ricky can think about is the boy's incredibly quick reaction speed. Tien's brother questions whether Urion can survive this confrontation after injuring his sister. What's special about him is that his sword is filled with magic, so it's even more powerful than an ordinary sword. Our boy tries to clarify the misunderstanding, emphasizing that he did nothing to his sister. In fact, he just wanted a chance to talk, especially when there's a clear misunderstanding here. However, Ricky's emotions for his sister become uncontrollable. As he unleashes his wind technique, the destructive slash obliterates everything in its path. The attack is so fast that even Urion is shocked. Although he manages to dodge and withstand it, our boy emphasizes that Ricky's violent actions are extremely dangerous. In a situation like this, Ian's brother prioritizes his sister's safety and protects her body with a wind shielding technique. In a situation like this, Ian's brother prioritizes his sister's safety and protects her body with a wind barrier technique. Next, he calls out the suspicious helmeted man. Ricky realizes he's dealing with a commoner and also agrees that Urion might not be a remnant. However, the fact that our boy could dodge both of his slashes with extraordinary ability impresses Ricky to the point where he even shares his name and introduces himself as the eldest son of the Count family. What makes someone like him special is that he serves a wind spirit, although he tries to introduce himself to make a strong impression. Urion feels embarrassed by that terrible introduction. It's funny he forgot his secret identity for a moment and accidentally introduces himself as Yuri Sungung. Yes, Ricky even pronounced that ridiculous name as if it were real and continued to ask one last question. With a menacing expression, the skilled swordsman demands to know who is responsible for putting his lovely sister in such a state. Our boy finds the constant use of wind quite bothersome and recalls what happened. Actually, it wasn't a bear that knocked her out. It was Urion. The problem is when he confesses this to his angry brother Tian, who is ready to find a reason to kill someone. He only makes Ricky even angrier. The swordsman unleashes a chaotic gust of wind, coldly declaring that he will ensure that helmet is sliced open. Next, Urion realizes that he only made the situation worse instead of clarifying it. However, he doesn't want to waste time here. Because his goal is to obtain those teeth, he tries to make peace in the fight, running off to talk another day. Witnessing his monstrous speed impresses Ricky greatly, to the point that it seems he is facing a real mid-level knight, or someone even more skilled, while Ricky thinks he has analyzed the boy's fighting style. So he tries to jump ahead with a ready slash. His sword's blade is incredibly fast, so fast that it's just moments away from hitting Urion's helmet. With a godlike confidence in his slashing ability, Ricky is sure that there's no way his opponent can dodge that attack. But surprisingly, Urion vanished right after the attack, nowhere to be found. The swordsman looks confused. Just as he wonders where Urion disappeared to, the boy strikes with a karate chop from behind. Taking him down with a single blow, the boy also reveals that throughout this time, he has been manipulating Ricky with his illusions, making him think he had landed an attack. The scene cuts away from there, and we return to the perspective of the academy. The entrance exam has finally ended, and an announcement is made regarding the unfortunate incident of a few candidates being sabotaged by others using monsters. Thanks to the princess's intervention, he ensured actions against the attackers. And the royal family is also investigating the matter in detail. The principal has called a meeting with the remaining teachers of the academy, praising them for their hard work for the benefit of the students. The teachers are generally impressed with the quality of the candidates participating in this year's exam. But contrary to Ji's words, one of the teachers strongly opposes her opinion, arguing that the nobility and the peasants just can't stop fighting each other. Ji thinks Jerry's comment is quite rude, and she criticized him for underestimating students from lower classes, but this arrogant guy didn't really care, and revealed the true nature of the school, where the nobles were allowed to exercise all their powers in the academy, as the sage himself mentioned. Hearing his father's name in the conversation, Ji roared at him until the principal finally broke the silence and stopped their debate. He wanted his assistant to continue with the remaining information, who concluded that a total of 29 candidates qualified, and just as he was about to announce the top 10 candidates, the scene shifted to the candidate's perspective, eagerly looking down at the results board. No doubt, the first position was secured by the radiant Princess Saruti, with the second place going to Ricky from the Wind Tribe, who was quite disappointed not to see Yuri Sung-sun's name here, and the third position went to a surprising friend named Jade, known as a magical swordsman. Sharing the fourth and fifth positions are twin sisters Saya and Mu, who seem very confident in their coordination, thinking they easily secured the top spot. If this were a team analysis, the sixth place goes to Ella, the common girl with red hair, who was extremely happy to have secured a spot for herself. At the same time, she was worried about where Urion had disappeared to, with the seventh position going to the terrible noble Chris, who was angrily realizing that a commoner had scored higher than him. Bro's ego was so fragile that he thought Ella had cheated to get a higher score. The eighth position belongs to a quirky thug named Rizzo, who seemed angry about having to take the test in the first place. In ninth place is the Princess Saru's #1 fan, Hina, and finally, the 10th place goes to a guy with hair covering his eyes, known as Goliath, and honestly, that's way cooler than a name like Chris. Let's talk about those who didn't make the top 10. The 24th position belongs to Tian, who felt immensely relieved to have passed, even though she was very happy for her brother's second place. She was really worried about Urion. Finally, our little killing machine was discovered, sweating bullets as he realized he had messed everything up. That's right, he couldn't even place last and failed the test, even after assuring himself he would make the cut. His decline could be attributed to his performance in the first two tests. Anyway, Ella rushed to his side. After learning that he had fallen into some kind of trap, she wanted to run after him, but then things became complicated. The younger brother reassured her that he was fine, and instead of focusing on himself, he shifted the spotlight to his sister, admiring her for coming in 6th, especially since getting a spot in the top 10 would grant you special privileges. Ella was happy but thought her position was due to luck and unexpectedly revealed an interesting fact that she wouldn't enroll. Urion was shocked when his sister suggested re-enrolling next year because their promise was to enroll together instead of leaving each other behind. A touching moment between the two siblings is interrupted by ugly Chris's awful laughter, who is genuinely thrilled that they made this suggestion. The fool keeps laughing even though Urion and Ella are looking at him with confusion for just a brief moment. Chris stops, making you wonder if he has any self-awareness, but no. This kid starts laughing like a dying pigeon, 2 seconds later laughing so hard that Urion considers beating him up. But let's return to the main office where G strongly opposes after hearing the results from the list. The principal doesn't understand her complaint, believing the results went exactly as they expected. The wizard teacher argues that she doesn't care about the top 10 list. The person she particularly cares about is Urion, who clearly failed the exam despite being Ella's talented younger brother. He didn't pass because they suspect he wasn't responsible for defeating the bear, something confirmed by Walmart Aizawa, stating that the boy's swordsmanship skills pale in comparison to his sister's, but that's exactly when Gi interjects with his thoughts, believing that Urion truly has infinite magical talent. Suddenly, the Academy's assistant rushes in to announce an emergency, clarifying that a candidate will finally be accepted. Along with the rest of the students, this raises the hopes of the candidates, making them question whether they have secured that special spot. Shocking everyone, Urion's name is announced as a major in magic, forcing Chris and his lackeys into depression once again. They can't believe a farmer got accepted into the academy instead of them. Ella is genuinely happy for her little brother, as now they can finally enroll together without any trouble. Meanwhile, our boy is processing the shock of what just happened to uncover what really occurred. Let's return to the office where G stands firm, defending Urion's position as a child with tremendous potential. She mentioned the boy's immense magical power capable of destroying equipment, but that's not all. What she saw in that brief moment was how Urion actively limited his own power range to ensure no one else got hurt in the process, meaning the boy has a level of insane control over his abilities. She thinks that not enrolling someone like him would be a huge loss for the kingdom and its benefits. Meanwhile, the strict teacher opposes Urion's acceptance, reiterating that Tien was the one who saved him in the exam. According to the reports they received, this means the boy lacks practical experience, which would be a loss for them in the long run. But G doesn't back down and holds firm that the only place that can give students like him some practical experience is the Magic Academy. If they allow the boy into the school, he could become one of the greatest talents the Academy has ever seen. Of course, with comments like this, Jerry is skeptical, looking down on the lower class and thinking it's pointless. When allowing a downgrade to attend their prestigious school, he stands by the interests and yells at the professor, firmly believing that the teacher is discriminatory, that he is unworthy of a place in this academy. Once again, the principal shouts in a loud voice, humorously causing his assistant's ears to hurt. He concludes that the Magic Academy is actually a wonderful safe haven to nurture talented students regardless of status. With that thought in mind, he sides with G's opinion, believing she is one of the truest heroic witches the Academy has ever seen. The fact that someone like her admires such a potential student means it wouldn't be wise to give up on Urion. Of course, Jerry's displeased expression tells you everything. He is clearly not satisfied with the situation. The principal ultimately uses his powers as the head of the Academy to accept Urion as a magic major under special admission. At the same time, he imposes a strict condition that if the boy cannot produce quality results within the given time frame, he will ultimately be expelled for not meeting the requirements. But that doesn't matter much now, since Ella and Urion are celebrating with great joy, while Ricky Bro is still feeling down about Yuri's Sung Sung, and actually comparing the kid's height to Urion's, believing they are about the same height. Suddenly, our boy remembers that this is the same swordsman he fought in the bear trial, the one he defeated. This is a nightmare scenario for Urion, because this guy is actually the closest to knowing the truth about his secret. However, the swordsman turns away, recalling Urion's results in the sword test, believing he is much weaker than the guy he fought. Ella doesn't know what just happened, while our boy is just glad the situation didn't blow up on him the next day. 10 top students, as well as the special students announced, will be in advanced classes. It's their first day at the academy, and Ella is as nervous as a twig. As soon as they open the door, their eyes are glued to a luxurious space, where the top-ranked people are relaxing in their seats, with the princess and Ricky along with other top ranks. Some of them immediately notice the regulars entering the room, while Ella is so stunned she doesn't even know where they should sit. Urion, on the other hand, feels excited about the idea of receiving education in his new world, although of course, he understands that the educational standards for this era will be much less advanced compared to the tech world he came from. A man comes right after them, and it's the mass murderer Rizzo, who orders them to move. Ella quickly lets him through, while our boy begins to wonder if this guy will become a bully in class. Seeing Rizzo arrive, Chris raised the issue of him being late, barking at him for having lower standards than those who usually show up earlier. The problem is this crazy guy really doesn't care and simply calls Chris a jerk, bragging about his status. The blonde noble reminded him that he was a rank above Rizzo, giving him immediate power to look down on him and order him not to be late. From now on, as you might expect, Rizzo was shocked for a moment and questioned whether Chris was confident in his strength. Just because he was a rank higher, the guy stood up in front of him and promised the blonde noble that he was ready to prove his true abilities beyond the scope of a simple test. In fact, Rizzo was ready to bury Chris underground for that. This was the first day, and the situation was already this tense. Even Ella was noticing their argument without paying attention. Yuri remained calm and advised them to take their seats, while the rest of the advanced class members Hina, Jade, and Goliath also observed the scene. Jade, the shining blue-haired boy, was excited to see our duo for some reason. Nonetheless, the siblings made themselves comfortable in the plush seats. And feeling at ease, Jade happily welcomed them with an open heart. In response, Ella also shared her name. Although she was quite formal about it, the Charisma Prince assured her there was no need to act stiff like their classmates. He even admired the commoners in some aspect. Since this was the first time in the school's history that a commoner sat in an advanced class, while they were talking, Urion had a hard time holding back his laughter. Internalizing that Jade was really trying too hard, the third-ranked student shifted his attention to greet his buddy, doing so politely and humorously. Urion gave him a free pass by revealing that he wasn't even Ella's biological brother. For some reason, that remark genuinely angered him, breaking Jade's composure as he clenched his fists and praised Ella for her talent in sword fighting, even though he could admire her. Jade found himself annoyed by Urion's abilities, wondering how the kid could keep up with the advanced class. Our buddy just smiled back at him. At that moment, the entire place was buzzing with heated arguments going on. In the next scene, we see the siblings walking back, talking about how they hardly did anything on their first day. Urion understood that their real classes would start tomorrow, so he was truly looking forward to this experience, while his sister was lost in thought, admiring that they were finally at their dream school. She wanted both of them to share a great time together until their other siblings could catch up. Their sweet conversation was interrupted by a group of upperclassmen bullying, mocking the commoners for being here. I can't imagine how these two got into the school, to the point where those damn nobles wonder if the standards for this year's exam will be lowered, of course, while they're saying this right in front of our buddy. Urion couldn't help but feel satisfied seeing the upperclassmen thugs looking down on the character of hidden strength a second-year student. The thugs remind the freshmen to greet them properly like the upperclassmen do, and Ella appears extremely anxious, trying to greet them while protecting her little brother. But these thugs don't really care about a simple greeting. Instead, they make an unreasonable demand for the girl to strip off her clothes. Because she doesn't deserve noble attire, one of the thugs grabs our buddy, trying his best to intimidate him. But surprisingly, no matter how much strength he uses, he still can't lift Urion off the ground. The thug can't comprehend how a kid like him could be so heavy. Meanwhile, Urion just looks at him with a cute smile, showing no signs of fear. From a distance, Jade rushes to the scene. Criticizing the second-year thugs that the academy is not a place to discriminate against others, Ella tries to help her brother, someone who finds the whole situation quite interesting. Jade approaches the upperclassmen, pleading for them to let the freshmen go. Because their actions are tarnishing the academy's reputation, this remark angers the second years, and in response, that damn thug actually slaps Ella in the face. Jade is horrified to see the girl being hit like that, and even for Urion, this scene truly makes him angry, because he can't believe that a bunch of trash dares to take down his sister. In the next scene, we meet a top villain. Haiwan is the resident hero of the academy, and she is responsible for guiding the advanced class. The principal is very grateful for her contributions. While Haiwan doesn't think much of it since she doesn't have much else to do, her straightforward and cold attitude makes the principal chuckle, and reveals that this year's advanced class may be one of the greatest reasons in the school's history. Immediately, the teacher with the sweet eyes realizes that he's talking about the siblings, of course even after many nobles rejected this approach. The kids are still granted special admission to the advanced class. Ella's position is deserved thanks to her excellent swordsmanship. When they discovered her unconscious mana integration with the blade, of course, if she were a noble, she would have immediately secured that position without any opposition. The principal agrees with the idea, but what really piques Hwon's curiosity is the mention of Ella's brother, who shows no promise. Of course, Ji has said the opposite and tried to speak well of the kid but still doesn't reveal anything about the boy's abilities. And even after that, the principal continues and eventually grants him special student status, which means he has a greater goal lying behind his vision. Related to the academy's purpose, hearing her thoughts, the principal curiously asks the hero residents. He asks if the current system is functioning well, as although the Magic Academy is supposed to be a fair place for nurturing talent, the reality is that the nobles use it merely as a means to gain greater power, which means unless they can fix the system, the kingdom will inevitably face collapse. Haiwan recalls that the only thing she knew since she was young was her combat knowledge. She was the best at it, so she trusted the principal's judgment and vision for the future of the system. At the same time, she directs his attention to the window, which shows a clear scene of Urion being bullied by one of the upperclassmen. The principal is horrified and wants to intervene immediately, but Haiwan, full of curiosity, stops him, believing this is a great opportunity for them to observe. Anyway, she is curious to learn more about the secret the principal sees, returning to the fighting scene. The arrogant upperclassman just knocked Ella down, shocking Urion and Jade, the younger brother quickly freeing himself. He rushes to save his sister while Jade, who's in third place, jumps in to take his place. He wants the boy to take his sister to the infirmary. because he was no longer playing around and wanted to teach these arrogant ones a lesson by reporting them to the office. Being called a bunch of jerks angers one of them, but this is the scary part. The muscular guy is terrified. In shock, wondering how the kid escaped his grasp in an instant, the boy looks at his sister's bloodied face. You see, when that fifth-year classmate attacked Ella, he actually infused mana into his punch, showing a completely insane behavior, even for a useless one. Urion really wanted to take him down for hurting his sister, but unfortunately, he couldn't reveal his power. The fight between the arrogant Grant and Jade begins with a display of strength. The thug is shocked to see the scrawny boy smaller than him. But for some reason, he still has a power equivalent to his own, unable to do anything. The jerk calls his friend Nigel to use magic, believing it is important for them to restore their respect as upperclassmen. A sophomore is about to use his wand. As Jade warns him about the regulation against using magic on campus, Urion simply tells Jade to step aside, and also continues healing his sister in the process. Jade begs him to leave while the boy shocks everyone by revealing that he healed his sister. So there's nothing to worry about. The mention of healing is so shocking that even he and the principal are left speechless. Ella finally regains consciousness as her brother assures her that she's okay, and now you have to wonder, could it be that Urion doesn't suffer any side effects from exposing his power? To find out, let's explore his thoughts about how you developed a technique to hide your power. It's surprising that the senior students are almost trembling in fear. Seeing your healing magic and nearly giving up upon witnessing it, he curiously asks whether the principal will choose that boy for special training because he knows about the boy's healing power, even though we all know that's not the case. For some reason, the boy can't understand why everyone is shocked and paying attention to him, and Jade doesn't know what to say. Asking how Ella fully recovered, Urion tries to explain that he simply healed her. It seems he still doesn't grasp the greatness of healing magic in his world, so let's zoom out a bit and briefly talk about it. Healing magic is considered a restorative method to heal wounds, of course. Even so, it still takes at least 5 to 15 minutes to complete, even for the best magicians. They can't do it in under 5 minutes, and Urion, the boy, actually demonstrated instant healing, right before everyone's eyes. This is bad news for him as he realizes it like a bolt from the blue. Suddenly, even Nigel is impressed with Urion's abilities while his friend is angry. It's funny that Jade also feels offended, because this guy plans to take this opportunity to really show off in front of Ella, our glorious queen. He approaches the scene, stopping the fight immediately. The others can't imagine how quickly she appeared, but it seems Yuri had realized it long ago, that someone was secretly watching them. This woman's interest is in the boy, even though she is so cold. He can't help but smile at the talented group that enrolled this year. She chooses not to punish them. Since they're still in the opening ceremony phase, basically that bully won't be punished and is planning revenge for another day. The scene shifts to the amazing dormitory that both Ella and Urion were accepted into as part of the advanced class. Our boy is as excited as a puppy, gleefully smiling while Ella feels a bit disappointed. She really didn't know he possessed such immense talent, especially when it comes to instant healing, something unheard of. Urion tries to ignore that as much as possible, and acts as if he doesn't know how special his skill is. The poor girl feels somewhat inadequate compared to her brother's abilities. She thinks that one day they will drift apart because of their different skills. Her words really make Urion feel uncomfortable. But Ella decides to stay positive and assures him that she will do her best from now on. After all, they are both in the same advanced class, and they will support each other until the end. Happy to hear his sister's words, Urion solidifies his thoughts and agrees to grow together. The scene shifts to the next day, where Hewan is interviewing students and introducing himself as their class teacher. Kina is overwhelmed by the teacher's appearance while Goliath realizes what it truly means to be in the advanced class. Urion is astonished that the same woman they met yesterday has become their teacher, starting with the role of instructor, reminding them of the soft and comfortable feelings students should experience in their room, as everything is luxurious and exclusive to the advanced class. This also means that students who cannot enter the advanced class will not enjoy such privileges. But not only that, the beautiful outfits they will wear and the fantastic food they will eat, as well as access to excellent facilities at their discretion. Everything is a reward for securing a spot in the advanced class. Maintaining a position in this class means they will continue to enjoy such luxuries. Without facing any issues, she states all those promises eventually lead to the shocking reality. The demotion system ensures that any student who does not meet the minimum score will be expelled from the advanced class. And that means they will be demoted as seats are reserved for the best of the best. Even more shocking is that no candidate could maintain their position in the advanced class just last year. This means graduating from this class is extremely difficult. While some are terrified, Urion is excited and hopes to see what will happen. Their teacher starts the first class and begins writing on the board, but to our boy's shock, he won. Seems to have written something promising. Let's analyze the criteria for the advanced class. You see there's an evaluation system called Excellent Evaluation, and this is based on an absolute assessment rather than the usual curve, so the number of students in each advanced class varies and gradually decreases over time. Those in the advanced class are known for receiving special support and a promising career immediately after graduation. That's the best anyone can ask for, but at the same time, as soon as their grades start to drop, chaos will ensue, because they will immediately be demoted back to a regular class. All the honors and prestige they could gain from the elite class will vanish like dust, and as Haiwan explained, the number of students graduating from the advanced class is a sad number, which is none. This means it's hard to imagine that our protagonist, who is supposed to maintain a humble image, would have a chance to graduate from this class, but let's not worry about that, and focus on the teacher's writing. The kids are shocked because their first class is basically just basic math. It's the doubling of numbers. This makes Chris feel scared as he begs to ask a question. The dumb kid nervously asks why they have to learn math in a prestigious academy where magic and swordsmanship dominate. To that, the teacher with beautiful eyes asks why he cares about learning magic. The golden-haired noble reveals that he wants to be strong like a wizard, like her, and so that one day he can help the kingdom. That's a perfect standard answer for anyone, and the teacher agrees with that. But there's a clear mistake in the boy's approach. The issue is that to become stronger requires not just mana or swordsmanship in this world, but also the most powerful weapon of all, knowledge. If someone can accumulate knowledge to an excellent level, they will easily surpass their previous potential. Of course, this idea is not understood by these students. They still haven't grasped the main point. To demonstrate what she means, Haiwan casts a simple fire spell on the tip of her finger, wondering how to make it bigger. The obvious answer comes from Chris, who tells her to inject more mana, but when Haiwan does so, that small flame turns into a raging fire column. The teacher confirms this line of thinking and explains that normally, people would have the same approach and inject more mana. Chris is showing off for a correct answer. While the teacher continues, what would happen if a person cannot inject more mana into the same spell this time? She asks Hina, who nervously replies that if someone has no extra mana to inject into the spell, they need to use other mages to support their spell. But this is a problem even though it could always be. Haiwan believes this is unreliable from her perspective. The best way to cast a larger fire spell without injecting more mana is actually to combine it with a wind spell. She beautifully illustrates how. These two small spells can create a fire vortex so powerful that it's even stronger than injecting mana. Thanks to the nature of magic, fire interacts with wind, making it stronger in Urion's scientific terms. This is a combustion reaction. That's the power of having knowledge of why. An excellent mage simply can't rely on a cookie-cutter method like injecting more mana, so she points to the board, emphasizing the importance of learning. Haiwan prepares for their first simple test in class. Time passes and we see students taking notes until their teacher tells them to stop. Next, she wants to check their answers against the answer key. Surprisingly, 3 students scored perfectly. This is a big deal for Chris as he realizes he's not one of them, those who scored perfectly. There's Princess Saruthi, whose performance makes her Hasone fangirl gasp. The second perfect scorer is Rizzo, which is shocking. The guy sitting right next to Chris, it's really funny because even though he's a fool, there's no way a guy like him could score perfectly. He's sweating bullets as Rizzo appears from behind like Diddy, and wonders if the blonde noble will fail to score perfectly. The same perfect upperclassman who should have come early and set an example for them all. The same clown who ranked 7th. Rizzo leaves a chilling reminder for Chris that their class rankings will change every month. And even though he doesn't care about rankings, he still makes Chris panic and tells him to try harder next time. Oh man, this guy really got put down like that. Haiwan waits a moment before announcing Urion as the last to score perfectly. The fact that he achieved such a score surprises the other nobles. But it freaks Chris out even more. His own sister is shocked while our boy is here smirking like a villain, acting as if he just solved quantum physics or something. He confidently recalls his high school days when he excelled in the education program. For him, this simple problem is nothing to worry about. He thinks he's about to breeze through the school's education part while the nobles, like Jade, are drawn to Urion's abilities and motivated to do better than him. Their teacher begins to wrap up the simple tests, emphasizing it's time for them to receive their rewards. Holding a unique badge in her hand, she casts a duplication spell and shoots the badges right onto their desks, instructing them to attach it to their uniforms. Thanks to this badge, they will have access to any facility in the school. One example of this is the exclusive dining area for the advanced class. For commoners like Urion and Ella, this is basically a dream come true, especially given their difficult circumstances. They are seen enjoying the perfect meal, truly happy to have the privilege of being in the advanced class. Both of them want to stay in the advanced class just for the dining area. The siblings promise to do their best to maintain high grades. Right after lunch, their next class will be monster hunting, with Haiwan as their teacher, showing that this class is very important and will have a decisive impact on their grades. If they perform poorly, they risk being demoted. Filled with motivation and confidence, Ella plans to take first place because there's no other way. She's about to give up Gordon Ramsay's cooking. At the same time, the main character emphasizes that the first-year students still lack experience to hunt monsters on their own, so she brought along a group of fifth-year students to help them on this mission. And you know what? They're the jerks who bullied Yuri and Ella. Earlier, Haiwan explained that teamwork is necessary for this exam as it will count towards their scores, making it even worse for Urion, who realizes that his scores are about to be ruined. The arrogant upperclassmen welcome the inexperienced freshmen, reminding everyone that teamwork is important. These arrogant ones also threaten to report the freshmen if they misbehave, affecting their scores. It's safe to say our trio isn't looking forward to this exam, because even Jade apologizes to both Urion and Ella, advising them to stick close to them during this time, although the feeling of being paired with these jerks is unpleasant. But it's necessary for them to maintain their place in this class. The red-haired girl expresses the same feelings, but at the same time she also suspects this terrible couple, because it's clear they will have some plan to ruin their scores. Our boy can't even stand the sight of them laughing from afar, refusing to let anything happen to his precious scores. But suddenly he comes up with a plan, calling them his seniors. He leans into the idea of betting with them. This is a surprising yet insulting proposal from a lower status person, as the arrogant upperclassmen think our boy can't do anything, but Urion continues to tempt them, emphasizing that they will show them how capable they are. Urion is more than happy to demonstrate his skills. One of the offended upperclassmen quickly grabs the weapon barrel and throws it straight at the freshmen, urging them to quickly get their weapons. After all, they are about to have a mock battle, and if the freshmen win against the upperclassmen, they will be acknowledged. The intimidating one tries to threaten them by adding that they are using real weapons in this fight, so if they get hurt, it's their own fault. After all, no teacher can predict whether the student was injured by a person or another monster. Added another layer of worry. Initially, Urion acted like a shy boy, terrified at the idea of having to fight them. Nigel was enjoying the sight of fear, but found it amusing. All three first-year students were terrified, acting as if they were at Disneyland. This was truly everything they had ever wanted from the start. In reality, Ella was very excited to pick up a sword and get started, leaving their threatening tactics behind. The upperclassmen were mocked to the point where they didn't even want to hold back anymore. In the next scene, a battle began between Ella and the bastard who attacked her last time, but shockingly, the girl was able to hold her ground quite well. And not just because he could channel mana into her sword, but Urion's sister felt frustrated that she was once again powerless to protect her brother. It was because the situation had made her too tense and flustered, and that was also why she refused to let herself falter today. A big guy here begged Nigel for a protection spell, so the wizard quickly cast a defensive spell called *** Super Armor ***. This ability greatly enhances a person's strength, but as Nigel got distracted, Jade charged in from behind and with a simple swing of the sword, he cleanly severed the magical staff. Nigel was terrified and confused until he saw Jade pull out his badass sword. I'm not lying, that sword looks so cool. The level 3 first-year student returned the sword to the shadows and reminded his seniors that it's wise to always attack the wizard in a fight, which means the big ugly guy was now the only one left in the fight as he was cornered. The man became timid and tried to aim at Urion, but as he lunged, Ella immediately acted to stop him. The clown was charging closer to the mysterious boy who didn't blink for a second. Smiling, Urion emitted a bit of dark aura surrounding him, causing the brute to be so scared he couldn't move. But in a surprising twist, before anything happened, Urion was attacked by a giant monster without realizing it. The creature extended its claws to kill Urion, but in a decisive moment, it was Ella who rushed in to save her little brother. Sacrificing herself in the process, the creature seriously injured her, leaving a visible wound that made her teammates furious. Jade jumped into action by activating the second form of his demon sword, the twisted blade transforming into something truly devastating. It destroyed the creature's skull with a single strike, leaving its corpse scattered on the ground, while the filthy, arrogant guy looked on. He could hardly swallow the fact that a freshman could kill the monster with just one attack. Although the injured farm girl was badly hurt, he then saw her brother, Urion, immediately healing her wounds as if nothing had happened. The boy's order for instant healing left him stunned as the bastard finally understood the feeling of being in an advanced class. Humble and accepting defeat, the brute conceded in their bet about their victory, stating they wouldn't cause any more trouble. However, the huge guy had a problem with Urion, believing that his healing magic was the only thing that made him special. Even Nigel jumped in and continued to talk trash, emphasizing that the white-haired boy would be helpless in any other situation. Their constant insults annoyed Ella quite a bit, but Urion didn't really feel offended as they had made some good progress. Let's change the scene and visit He 1, revealing that the test was never intended to be a group activity. From the very beginning, she was basically complaining about the second-year teachers, who acted as if they had the power to change everything. At the last minute, Howen questioned whether that was truly how things worked and if they were capable of influencing such decisions. In class, they eagerly assured her to trust the second-year students, who would be great support for the freshmen. However, he still reflected on her obvious concerns. A simple theory class turning into a monster hunting class was definitely unusual. And then these idiots were also trying to act as if she didn't know anything because it was her first time. Sensing their intentions from the start, Haiwan cheerfully entertained the idea that her students wouldn't be harmed as they were being protected by reliable seniors. All they could do was nervously laugh, which only further confirmed her suspicions. He didn't like that. That these people intended to mess with her students made her wonder what she should do with them, as Haiwan revealed a small part of her power. Dominating the space and making the other teachers shiver, temporarily, Haiwan let it slide. Curious to see how everything will unfold and trusting her talented students to handle it, let's return to the monster hunting class. Clearly, the big guy brought Jade to his leader, ensuring that the rest of the civilians wouldn't follow them. Something about the situation scared this demon sword user. He still didn't understand why he was called out here alone. Sitting in front of him was a confident and quirky kid along with his henchmen. This kid belongs to the advanced second-year class and is also at the top of the rankings. Currently, the second-year class is often considered a den of demons. Specifically because of one kid, that's Laurel, who holds supreme power over everyone and scored the highest in last year's ceremony. Back to the opening ceremony, this kid actually treated the other nobles like a joke, demanding they act like this year. The advanced class last year wasn't any different in terms of seats, until this crazy guy decided to defeat each of his classmates. Until they were nearly dead, 3 out of the 9 he fought had to surrender and still managed to stay in the advanced class. All the rest were taken to the hospital, so only 4 students survived in the second-year advanced class, and all of them are Laurel's henchmen, brutal in their own way. That raises the question Jade was about to ask. He didn't understand why they were all here, of all places. Larry demanded his attention, and talked about how he had heard about Jade's family background before coming here. A kid from a demon sword family, bearing an enormous responsibility, because if he doesn't graduate from the advanced class, his family will face complete collapse. Let's explore the kid's background by going back in time. The boy's father was furious at the thought of using magical tools instead of a demon sword. He hated those who tried to use mana swords and acted as if they were superior. Unfortunately, with the rise of magic wands spreading across the kingdom, anyone can command the use of magic thanks to these special weapons, causing the demon sword family to begin to weaken and collapse. The boy's father placed all hope in his hands, pleading for Jade to succeed and graduate from the advanced class because if he does, the world will know that the demon sword family still matters. The boy's father didn't even think about the burden of responsibility and pushed all his problems onto Jade, reminding him that people would die if he doesn't successfully graduate right now. Somehow Laurel got wind of this information and even offered to let Jade graduate from the advanced class. This was a surprising offer as the boy couldn't understand what that meant. To clarify his proposal, Laurel explained that the advanced class is being closely monitored by those with unlimited wealth and power, and such individuals are actually assigning this kid a task. Ensure Larry graduates from the advanced class as long as they complete the basic task. These mysterious, powerful individuals are too strong, to the point where helping kids graduate from advanced classes is nothing to them. Jade was excited to hear Larry say something, who continued to get to the point, and told Jade to meet his friends with a new set of guidelines. He even emphasized that this mission is much easier than trying to graduate from class in a normal way. After all, this will help the family make demons, maintain their position in the world. This played him like a tune. Laurel sent Jade back to his friends. With the guidelines currently being kept secret, the boy returned to his friends, who were worried about his well-being and wondered if he was okay. They were curious about where the rest of the senior students had gone, but they didn't know that Jade was preparing a spell in hand just as Ella got distracted. Jade manipulated to draw his demon sword, aiming to slash at her body. Fortunately, he managed to step in on time and protect his sister. Urion criticized this and thought it was a bad joke. If anything, by the way, Jade seemed to have trapped them in a cage surrounded by his swords. He warned Urion to be careful with any funny ideas because the demon blades were actually pulsing with high-voltage energy, and it was dangerous enough that just a light touch would leave a scar for life. Urion was shocked and impressed by Jade's demon sword control, considering him quite talented with his technique. The boy spoke to both civilian brothers and apologized to them, pleading with them to stand still for a moment. After all, his older siblings just told him that he could actually steal all the scores for himself. Jade's greed and desperation were overtaking him, as he refused to downgrade from the advanced class at any cost. He didn't really think it was a big deal for the civilians, like the 2 of them dropping out. Instead, he even promised to save them right after the hunting time ended. During this time, Urion was watching him like a hawk, wondering what was going on. Now let's go back to Laurel and what was happening beside him right after this scene. This man was beating Jade for not following his orders. You see, he had actually ordered Jade to cut off all their limbs, but instead, the junior simply locked them up and walked away. Laurel had given him a good beating and wondered if Jade was trying not to follow a superior's orders. Let's go back a bit. When Jade actually received the mission from Laurel, who instructed him to cut off the limbs of the younger ones, the idea had terrified the boy. But Laurel assured him that the seniors really do not accept civilians attending the school, so this was an important mission. The only mission they had gotten so far was to kill the civilians from the advanced class. Oh, and this is the worst part. The teachers really couldn't intervene or come to find them because the seniors had ensured to gather all of them at a separate location, just to carry out this mission. The bottom line is Larry wanted to carry out this mission thoroughly. That's why he assigned this huge task to Jade. To earn respect in the eyes of the higher-ups, the boy has a family to save and the pressure is mounting on him. This takes us back to the present, about the boy who disobeyed the First Order and ended up getting brutally beaten for it. Laurel couldn't understand the emotions of the freshman, wondering if he really wanted to graduate from the advanced class. At this point, after all, he's going to absurd lengths just to save a bunch of insignificant farmers. It's frustrating. Finally, Jade mustered some courage and shouted at the jerk that they weren't just farmers but his friends, and he said it with a fierce look. Leroy reminded him that it had only been 2 days since they met, so there was no reason to act like they had a relationship to maintain. Here, in a fit of rage, the user of the wicked sword yelled that he wasn't doing it because they were close, but because Ella's exceptional skill with her sword deserved to be in the class, and when it came to her brother. Although he was lacking in swordsmanship and magic, one thing about the boy was clear. He was smart even now. Jade predicted that the boy would grow up to be a prosperous young man who would lead his kingdom to success, not to mention his instant recovery ability. This would earn admiration and affection from the injured in the kingdom. Jade deserves his place as a legendary figure in my heart as he supports both of his friends. Believing they are the future of the academy, they are greater than any noble trying to flaunt their status when hearing those words. Laurel actually found himself agreeing with Jade's point of view to some extent. At the same time, he belittled himself and promised the boy that his family would know nothing but despair if he continued like this. After all, if he had disobeyed an order from a noble like him, then Jade's family would be destined to suffer a complete collapse. This also applied to Jade's precious little siblings, who placed their hopes entirely on their brother's success. I think I really like this conflict, the idea that Jade knows he has to succeed for his family but at the same time chooses the right way. This is how you write a character. Memories of his siblings flooded his mind. The boy's siblings wanted their father to smile again and be happy. Now that Jade is about to join the magic school, their supportive older brother ensures they just need to be patient and trust him, promising that he would graduate from the advanced class. Thoughts about his family rose in his mind, while Laurel used the boy's feelings of guilt and despair against him, urging Jade to take his hand and stand by him in this mission if he could do it. He would be able to prioritize his family's future over the success of the kingdom. After all, his little siblings didn't deserve a tragic fate. Ultimately, Laurel emphasized that the civilians would die one way or another. No teachers would come to save them. So, there was no reason to resist if he could go and kill his friends. Laurel assured him that he would take care of the rest. He even reached out his hand to the desperate boy, promising that they would become wealthy nobles living successful lives after this. Initially, it seemed like Jade was succumbing to his dire circumstances, but then this Giga Chad boy swatted Laurel's hand away like a true hero, cursing that bastard to go away because he would never do that to Jade. His friends were just as important as family, and he refused to compromise on either side. His reaction genuinely shocked Laurel. You declared that Jade would regret messing with you. Let's take a quick look at the current situation. Second-year students. The ones who came to assassinate civilians found themselves in a surprising situation as Jade showed his resilience. Unfortunately, even Jade knows that despite his strength, the senior in front of him is undeniably powerful in this situation. His best chance of winning is to stick to a smart strategy, knowing he can't let these bastards get away with what they want. Everything rests on his shoulders, because if these guys somehow manage to defeat him, they will go after his friends to kill them. It's terrifying. The terrifying noble declared that he would stab Jade 10 times before moving on to kill his siblings. The weapon he chose seemed to be a short knife. Surprising Jade, the fight began as he experienced a sensation unlike any other for a split second. His opponent not only closed the distance but also stabbed Jade right in the chest, the intense pain momentarily paralyzing him. Meanwhile, Laurel commented that the sword was once his weapon until he realized that using a dagger was more fun for slaughtering opponents. With the first stab made, he tossed the freshman aside, reminding him that there are 9 more to go. The remaining henchmen were discussing Laurel's terrifyingly powerful ability to immobilize others. That was really the reason he had been able to overpower his classmates even though they refused to surrender. They eventually got defeated. In Laurel's case, there was no fight, just a one-sided slaughter in every match he participated in. To make the situation even more amusing and painful, Laurel gave a countdown of 10 seconds before making the next stab, slowly marking the time on the clock, while Jade recalled the feeling of being completely frozen before getting stabbed with the countdown running. Seizing this opportunity, Jade activated the 4th form of his shadow sword, ***, shadow whip, ***, aiming to reach Laurel, who casually blocked it as if it were nothing. As the countdown ended, he tried to use his movement immobilization ability against Jade again, the stab connecting as Jade appeared from behind. Stabbing him in the upper back, the intense pain on Jade's face was a satisfying and humorous sight for this ruthless psycho. He decided to do another countdown while the guy was almost trembling in pain, the countdown reaching the final few seconds, as Jade launched his 3rd form called ***, spear, ***, hoping to overwhelm his opponent with sheer numbers. The spears were quite impressive in the eyes of Laurel's subordinates, who thought Jade was truly an incredible talent from the new generation. However, things weren't looking good for him as Laurel ultimately stabbed him painfully from behind his hand once again. Sending painful shivers throughout his body, the torture continued as the ruthless noble began to count down, the scene cutting back to the 2 brothers. Those still trapped by the high-voltage swords, Ella and Urion both agreed that mentioning exclusivity on the score was a lie. Urion's sister was worried about Jade's condition, knowing that the seniors were definitely threatening him or something, but our boy was really confident that Jade would easily handle the threat if it were the same two clowns from before, but deep down he had a really bad feeling about this situation. Cutting back to the torture scene, the poor boy was kneeling, had been stabbed repeatedly as his body collapsed to the ground. The sight was so brutal that even the big guy before was horrified. Larry stepped forward to remind the coward that if he kept acting like a coward, he didn't deserve a place among them. Their main goal was to kill. After all, the subordinate trembled in fear and immediately apologized. As for Jade, he was severely injured, close to death, to the point that even Larry thought he was dead. He left a little reminder for the demon sword user that he would go kill the farmers himself. In the end, Laurel thought that all his efforts were pointless and ultimately led to his family's ruin. Laurel compared himself to his unconscious body and wondered why the boy had gone so far, not only ruining his family but also messing everything up for himself. He continued to nag Jade, assuring him that there was still a chance for them to wipe out the farmers together, but eventually the boy spoke up. Even in his pitiful state, Jade revealed that Laurel's ability lasted a total of 5 seconds and then required an additional cooldown of 10 seconds. Being exposed like that made Laurel seriously anxious, but he thought it was pointless as he lay on the ground with the knife close to Jade's body. Laurel flipped him over to ask for an answer, causing him even more pain. Jade screamed, but with this cruel noble. He couldn't comprehend what was going on in the boy's head. Even after being stabbed multiple times in relentless pain, the boy still refused to move and obey his orders. Despite being promised graduation from advanced class, he brushed it off and didn't care about his family's future. It's hard to understand how the boy could care about ordinary people. Mustering all his strength, Jade bravely smiled. He knew that Laurel was restless for his own reasons to keep fighting, especially for a bunch of ordinary people, even trembling in his condition. Jade continued to announce a shocking news, criticizing Laurel for having no friends. God, does he really have no girls or friends at all? To him, Laurel was the epitome of the most pitiful, because he had no one to rely on. Provoked by such words, the cruel noble immediately rushed to stab the knife straight into the boy's head. But suddenly, Laurel felt something from afar, and right after that, his blade flew into the air, not a trick from Jade or anything, because even he seemed surprised. Instead, it was his friend Urion, appearing like a hero. Immediately, healing Jade and reminding him to always look to the future. Jade couldn't understand how Urion could appear out of nowhere. But in the eyes of the second-year advanced students, they were amazed at his instant healing ability. Larry was left speechless, his fun was ruined. While Urion mocked the guy that he wouldn't leave here without being hurt, with a satisfied smile. Our boy told him to get ready to take a beating. This taunt only brought joy to Laurel, who gripped his knife tightly, and thought that the people had made a huge mistake coming here alone, activating his motion-stopping technique. He aimed at Urion as a target, but the boy just stood there, emitting an aura, challenging him to try. The boy just stood there, and surprisingly for Larry, Jade charged with his wicked sword, almost catching him. The fact that Jade's power had fully recovered only highlighted the excellence of the instant healing ability, as he had missed Laurel. Jade, frustrated, asked Urion why he came to such a dangerous place, especially when he knew all the risks. In response, Urion revealed that he couldn't just ignore a severely injured friend. Even after healing him, he began to wonder if Jade was still in pain. The boy's words left the wicked sword user astonished, who quickly reassured Urion that his healing ability was truly perfect. Our boy was happy to hear that and also ensured that Ella was okay. Because he had left her with the princess a while ago, hearing news about Ella's safety, Jade felt truly relieved. But being so openly ignored made Laurel angry. He reminded them that he was here feeling lonely. How funny that Jade was here feeling so scared. While our boy couldn't contain his laughter at that awkward comment, the wicked sword user was truly afraid of what Larry could do, especially when he was in the mood to kill both. In his mind, the most reasonable strategy was to actually run away instead of confronting directly. He even warned Urion that this guy was beyond their capabilities. This was quite disappointing for our boy, who had been looking forward to a good show. But of course, the scary noble emphasized that he wouldn't let any of them escape. Once again, he used the motion capture technique, making Jade wonder who among them would become his target as Larry approached. The question became who he would choose as a target. The threatening situation required appropriate measures, which is why Jade deployed the 8th form of the wicked sword. Manifesting it as a shield and effectively blocking Laurel's attack attempt, it was clear that he had tried to hinder Jade's movement. That's why he had bet on that chance. Being blocked like that frustrated the noble, while Urion was impressed. Due to the ever-changing nature of the demon's sword, Larry's entire strategy was to block Jade first and then attack Urion, who would try to save his friend. For that reason, Jade tricked him and made himself the target. Now he's frozen, his shield's still there. But Jade can't move an inch. The annoying nobility mocked him for trying to escape his grasp. It's not like that would help him at all. But Urion heard all of this and called him out directly, unleashing his divine presence, leaving a chilling warning for this sadistic clown. that if he dared to attack him again, he would kill Laurel before he could even sense his presence. The expression on the noble's frustrated face was truly priceless. He was here pondering his existence, wondering what the hell was going on. It was a completely different feeling for him. A truly terrifying and fearful sensation. Our boy didn't even need to lift a finger. He just had to radiate his aura and drain all fighting will from his opponent. Anyway, Urion approached Jade, healing him once again, which made the third-rate student anxious. Larry didn't seem to be attacking them anymore. Jade didn't understand what was going on in Larry's thick head, but he believed this was their only chance to end the fight. Clinging to a pathetic and desperate attempt to win, Larry ordered his lackeys to come here as he was tired of playing around. He gave the three idiots 10 minutes to kill both, and it was clear that these guys were just as confused as their leader, as they were eager for a chance to mess around. Unfortunately, this situation had shifted from survival mode to extreme difficulty. Jade had completely miscalculated the fight, forgetting that not only did they have to deal with Laurel, but the fact that the nasty noble had become a problem that needed addressing, and then there was the fact that all three of his lackeys were pretty strong for being members of the advanced class. A look of horror, failure, and death surrounded him. Jade had run out of options and cards to play. He truly couldn't win here. Suddenly, instead of shrinking back in fear, he abandoned the loser mentality and convinced himself that nothing good would come from this situation. If he didn't do something about it, from his perspective, the only chance to win was to run away, so with the little time he had left, Jade clutched his demon sword tightly, wondering how he could convincingly escape this situation. Finally, Urion broke the silence. Smiling contentedly and emphasizing that Jade had done his part, our boy acted like a true cool protagonist, delivering a powerful punch to his neck at such speed that Jade fainted instantly. Our boy caught him, acting as if the other guy had fallen naturally. Somehow, Urion's attack was so quick that no one could see it. In fact, they thought Jade had been scared and fainted from the shock. Our boy reassures Jade's unconscious body that he'll handle the rest of the battle. The perspective shifts to Ricky. He's a member of the Tsurugi team. At this moment, he starts to wonder why Urion is taking so long to return. Ella is really worried for the same reason, as it shouldn't take this long for him to return, even though Urion promised to be back pretty quickly. She's starting to think something must have happened, prompting the princess to suggest they should go look for them instead of going back to Larry's part. Clearly, in that brief moment, Urion had vanished without a trace, forcing the vile noble and his lackeys to chase after him. Afraid that he couldn't let any witnesses escape, the sadistic bastard couldn't believe that an ordinary farmer could escape with Jade's body. At an incredible speed, just as he's trying to find and kill them, someone suddenly appears. It's our favorite hero, the hat guy. The cloaked figures intervene, annoying Laurel's minions for interrupting their task. As for our boy, he's not really thinking much about the situation. Other than seeing this as an opportunity to stretch his body, looking super cool, the warrior hopes they will die slowly. Provoked, Laurel aims at him with a movement restriction ability. Calling him trash once again, Urion almost reveals his real name. Before changing his identity to the genius swordsman, his lackeys are overly confident and try to attack our boy like in Jujutsu Kaisen, thinking they can kill him. While the swordsman can't move, the satisfied expression on Leroy's face shows all about his arrogance. The issue is he has three powerful students as part of his team, Jen Kang, known for his extraordinary strength, and Yahello seems to have a mad obsession with killing. And then there's Kelly, the most loyal, carrying out every task for a sicko like Laurel. These guys are the best trio he could ask for, and he wants to ensure this fake swordsman dies a painful death, but the delusional fool is shocked, as all three of his minions are sent flying back, and here's the scary part, their bodies are actually crushed into the tree. With their butts sticking out for display, welcome to the start of a horror movie. A horror movie with Larry and his lackeys as the main characters. And Urion, as the antagonist, even reveals an interesting piece of information to the vile noble, pointing out his movement restriction ability. Completely useless against someone like him, he even criticizes him for using such pathetic tricks, which only makes the bastard angrier. Stubborn as he is, he refuses to listen to the swordsman's advice and continues to use his technique. Laurel tries to stab him, but ultimately, that effort is in vain as Urion catches the dagger with 2 fingers, emphasizing that technique is useless against him. The verbal clash gets tense as he mocks Leroy for only knowing one technique in his fighting style. In response, the blonde freak tries to slash him dozens of times, but it's all meaningless when even without using his sword, the swordsman can block every attack, making the fool even more frustrated, mocking him that he won't win just by playing defense. Urion decides to take this kid down by slicing off the tip of his precious dagger, which brings him to the brink of despair. He reminds himself that even though he's the top second-year student at the academy, when it comes to Leroy's strength, all he feels is disappointment. This fight isn't even worth starting for him, looking on with disgust. Laurel decides to go all out by pulling a sword from his back, because seriously, how could he hide a weapon like that all this time? Anyway, this guy is bragging that he hasn't used a sword in 4 years, thinking that this would make any difference. The idiot charges at Urion, who's quite pleased to see this battle getting interesting. Suddenly activating his immobilization technique, Laurel arrogantly proceeds to attack, But this time, he leaves an interesting message for the masked swordsman, revealing that his ability to restrict movement isn't the only unique thing about him. In fact, among the second-year students, the main reason Laurel tops the rankings is because of his divine speed, and by the way, this madman actually makes that happen. He truly slashed Urion with his sword, a perfectly satisfying strike. Let's rewind to what happened last year. You see, while he was beating all of you classmates to near death, there was one main reason the school didn't question the severity of his actions. That's because his immense talent even overshadowed the crimes he committed. The school believes someone like him couldn't be expelled, because he's crucial for the success of the kingdom, and that's why this jerk is still here. Larry has regained his pride, and thinks that even the swordsman can't keep up with his monster-like speed, claiming that speed is the ultimate form of power. At the same time, he's quite surprised that the masked swordsman can withstand that attack, since Laurel had fully aimed to slice off his arm, but couldn't inflict any damage beyond a scratch. Urion lets him have that moment before deciding to give him another practical lesson. You see, the blood on his cloak isn't actually his. At that moment, Laurel realizes something. The blood is actually coming from his own body, and not Urion's. It's a deep cut that occurred before Laurel could comprehend what was happening as he looks down at his bleeding wound. The pain starts to creep in and he screams in agony. The whole scene is really boring for the boy, and I must remind you that there's a man bleeding right in front of him, and the best Yuri can call him is tedious, since it's reduced to a pitiful state. Laurel emphasizes that his talent is incredibly significant for the success of the kingdom, and attacking someone like him equates to betraying the kingdom. Urion also morally defeated him, reminding the fool that he was responsible for nearly killing someone. Remembering the suffering Jade went through, Urion became emotional. Now he has a personal vendetta against this guy. He promised the ugly face that he would make him suffer much more than that. At this moment, Larry felt true fear. The best he could do was cower and ask about the swordsman's identity, but right now, the swordsman could be seen as the embodiment of death. And suffering, he bid farewell to the guy while reaching for his sword, hinting at Laurel's end. The scene shifted to Ella's group, all three suddenly sensing the dark energy between them. Only Ricky knew it was swordsman Yuri Sung Sung. Having faced him once before, the princess remembered the name from their previous exam while Ricky bravely activated his wind magic to chase the energy source, with Saruti urging that they should follow too. But the scene mainly focused on Ricky's swift speed. Upon arrival, he saw Laurel's unconscious body bleeding. Standing right above him was Yuri Sung Sung, the swordsman who had beaten him once before. The name became so annoying that even the swordsman thought he should just call him Yuri next time. It's funny, Ricky completely ignored the advice and still called him that long-winded name. Dean's brother had seen for himself that even Larry wasn't a match for this guy, though he started to wonder why the mysterious swordsman hadn't killed the students yet. The swordsman clarified that he hadn't killed anyone, but Ricky saw that as a sign he was trying to hide his crimes. In any case, the Windmaster initiated his sword. Promising to bring the rebellious swordsman to light and make him confess amusingly, Urion questioned whether Ricky really thought he was stronger than Laurel, the one he had just casually defeated, but Tian's brother acted as if he had undergone some off-screen training, to the point where he was more confident in his strength than ever. This time, Ricky fully intended to unleash the power of the Great Wind Spirit. Mentioning the Great Spirit surprised Urion as he clearly remembered the goddess Horatia, implying that there was more than one intelligent species. Beyond humanity, no matter what, Ricky amplified his power by allying with it, which helped boost his strength. The immense pressure was truly impressive and made the boy come up with the idea that he should also keep an impressive power-boosting trick in his toolkit. Identifying the perfect moment to attack, Ricky drew 1,000 wind swords at once. That's right, 1,000 swords with a single swipe of the blade. He directed all those swords to attack the boy Urion, finding this effort quite cute at first glance. All the swords seemed to connect with the target in a dazzling light. But what actually happened in that brief moment was Urion had unsheathed his sword and unleashed thousands of cuts. Instantly destroying all the swords, Ricky sensed a great opportunity. Thinking that he finally created an opening to attack the swordsman, this time Mini Virgil from Devil May Cry over here is gathering a wave of energy, impressing Urion once again. But the situation is so harmless that this guy decides to ask Ricky an interesting riddle, asking him if he can watch his back. The confused wind genius has no time to think because in the next second, Urion karate chopped his butt with the same technique he used to take him down last time. An angry Ricky falls to the ground, expressing disgust at that move. Our boy praises him for showing more potential with his skills than Larry, but in the end, the result is still the same. The monster hunting class has been wiped out, all thanks to the intervention of the swordsman Urus, or whatever his name is. This guy is suspected of having used monsters to attack the noble kids and has reappeared to attack again. The class teacher rushes into the principal's office and ignores the gossip. Hai Yuan wants to clarify the issue and asks if the principal knows what happened. The principal assures her that he has heard everything and how she was summoned by the other instructors to stay in one place, which bothers her that he has been held in a single position, which the principal understands is not suitable for a woman with her personality. He reveals that she didn't resist at all, leaving everything to his talented students to handle the situation. However, she shares her thoughts about the person she suspects is responsible for the incident. She thinks the one responsible must definitely be a man who directly influences the teachers. In other words, this girl is actually accusing someone like the principal himself. The principal agrees with her thinking, believing that it is indeed the work of some high-ranking noble. A few seconds later, Urion emits a powerful surge of energy, causing every piece of furniture in this man's office to be torn apart. This is her warning, a merciful warning for the principal, hoping that he is not involved. Instead of yelling at her, the principal speaks to her calmly and assures Urion that he feels just as angry, that the students have been injured. He presents his situation, assuring her that he is not involved in any of this, but he is sure that the teachers who told her to stay have a part in this, which is why he is in the middle of an interrogation with them, hoping to clarify the issue and solve the mysterious case. In response, the resident hero advises him to take another good look at the second-year advanced class, because they are the ones responsible for causing the deaths of her students. The principal reveals that the kids are receiving immediate treatment for their injuries after confronting the mysterious swordsman. He intends to conduct further interrogations with the students. Urion wonders if this Urus guy is a spy for the Empire. Then the principal shares that they have no information on him. He places great importance on uncovering the identity of the man, believing that he posed a significant threat to the academy and that the man might be hiding among the students. Waiting for the next moment to strike, it's funny that the guy is currently enjoying a delicious meal. He will never get tired of the good food here. Ella felt the same way, savoring each bite right now. Urion felt the most relieved, thinking they wouldn't have to worry about being demoted for a while. With many students injured in the monster hunting class, Chris was disgusted by the way the farmers ate, calling them lowlifes. But Rizzo humbled him by reminding the jerk that he was also being rude by talking during his meal. His comments made Chris angry. Another fight broke out between the two, with Rizzo being so cold that the guy told him he had a prior appointment with the cowardly golden kid. At the hospital, Hina and Goliath talked about the civilians being attacked, yet they seemed to be fine, all thanks to instant recovery skills. Interestingly, one of the twin sisters, Mew, expressed a desire to have the same ability as him. Joining them happily was Jade, who was very glad to see the two brothers doing well. Urion knew that Jade was actually managing quite well on her own, and although he had fainted, his body seemed to be fine. As for Ella, she was very grateful to the boy. It left him puzzled after learning about his brave sacrifice to protect both of them. Ella advised him not to take risks alone. Because they were in this together, Jade was blushing, having the best day of her life. The guy thought he had scored points with his crush, and that probably made all the stabs he had to endure worth it, while for Urion, the guy decided to ruin the jerk's dream by listing Ella's favorite things in life. First was him, second was the lunch menu, and then, only after that, came Jade's name on the list. The poor kid got shot for no reason. Lunch was a hot scene just like all the others. The results of the monster hunting exam brought about a default position for every student in the advanced class, meaning they all survived being demoted this time. Then we skip a little time, jumping a few months ahead. The principal recognized Urion for his proficiency in magic and assured the boy that if he didn't pass this exam, he would be expelled permanently. So his peace was gone again, as once more, the guy was at risk of being expelled. The principal emphasized that the boy could only join the advanced class because he was admitted as a special student, and thus, his expulsion criteria were more sensitive than anyone else's, while the principal was very confident that Urion would pass this exam, with little trouble causing our boy to agree helplessly. Now let's talk about the details of the upcoming exam, the latest hurdle for the first-year students. Coming in the form of a midterm, where they would face another monster hunting exam, this time, the students would enter the resilient forest and try to maintain a score of 20 to pass the exam. 20 is actually a big number in Rizzo's eyes, who openly calls it a waste of his precious time. Even Chris was shocked by his refusal to accept mistakes, but instead of scolding the boy, the principal clarified that it was indeed a major concern. This led him to reveal some valuable information about the exam. First, he categorized the threat level of each monster, ranked into 5 types. Typical beasts like tigers and bears are level 1, meaning they are the weakest of all, and we have a special criterion for monsters. In the form of weapons, these troublesome swords, bows, and axes are considered level 2. Coming in third are natural disasters, classified as level 3 inches, the form of earthquakes, heavy rain, and storms. The fourth classification is a disease or disorder like depression or other conditions. And finally, the fifth category has only one type, the strongest of all, the embodiment of time. The principal further explained that the power of a monster is determined by its ability to kill humans. It's a strange concept that no one can understand, but one thing is certain, every type of monster is an enemy of humanity. Urion actually finds all this information about the New World quite interesting. As a sidebar, I really like this original idea of using abstract and inanimate things as the villains in the story, but Rizzo is really pissed off because even after saying all that, the principal still didn't mention the requirement to score 20 points. His rude tone did not bother the principal. On the contrary, he praised the boy for asking another great question. The principal revealed that each level will grant different points. Level 1 gives students 2 points, while Level 2 is equivalent to 5 points. The rest has not been specified yet, as there is no possibility for students to encounter higher-level monsters in the exam. In summary, the goal is to hunt monsters until reaching 20 points. The time limit is a full 5 days, and ultimately, this exam, unlike other exams, will be a personal challenge to prove that they are capable of staying in advanced class. Chris here is snickering like a clown, thinking that Urion is about to be eliminated in this exam, while our boy thinks the opposite, wondering how to take down the monsters while still having to hide his identity. The curious girls ask about the point rewards for Level 3. The principal proudly states that Mew becomes the third person to ask such an important question. He concludes that a Level 3 monster would be equivalent to a full 20 points, but in their case, it's better to run than to try to defeat something beyond their capability. Interjecting into the conversation, the martial arts teacher appears and reveals that such creatures cannot be taken down by students. Instead, G and Walmart Aizawa will ensure that those types of creatures are handled for them. During the exam, Haim Win also appears, ensuring that there will be no interruptions even from the betraying swordsman. After all, she will make it her job to observe the exam, encouraging her students to do their best. Meanwhile, things are getting more complicated for Urion, who is excited because he will have to come up with a new strategy. To pass the exam while keeping his powers a secret from the world, he thinks this exam is actually quite easy to handle. The problem is he will have to get past 3 observers who will keep a close eye on him, and among them, the most dangerous is Hei-Won. Chris decides to intervene in his affairs, reminding Urion that he will get beaten up in the individual exam because aside from his instant recovery ability, he has nothing to attack with. While the clown in class mocks him as Ella charges in, she promises her brother that she will do her best to help him. If anything, Urion feels a bit happy to receive this kind of motivation and wonders if everything will go smoothly. In the next scene, Budget Aizawa returns with an announcement, having sent all students to their designated positions while G seems to be using his magic gem to track all of them. Thanks to magical tools, they can closely monitor each student. It's amazing. Urion better have a 1000 IQ strategy, or he'll get caught immediately. The principal feels intrigued and wonders who among them will be able to pass the exam first. Clearly, everyone is betting on the princess, who has immeasurable power. The sword teacher bets on Ricky, who stands in a league of his own. GE agrees that all first-year students have potential. This leads to predictions about what will happen to the specially admitted student, Urion, with his dirty mouth. Jerry intervenes, believing there's no chance Urion could take first place or even pass this exam. In fact, Jerry laughs with delight, thinking the farmer will be expelled during this exam, which is a big concern for G, who emphasizes Urion's importance for the Academy's future, especially now that he can also use his instant recovery ability. Haim Win remains neutral, thinking they will know for sure over time whether the boy can make it through or not. The scene shifts to Urion, who feels uneasy being closely monitored. The issue is that expulsion is certain for him if he fails to meet the passing standard, but he also can't use his power publicly. This puts the boy in a contemplative state, wondering what the typical power standard in this world is. After all, when it comes to his instant recovery skill, it is considered one of a kind. He needs to think carefully about what kind of power is applicable in battle. While he is out thinking about the idea, a giant rat suddenly emerges from below to feast. Urion finds the ugly monster repulsive. The monster howled right in front of him, but unfortunately, because the boy was being closely observed, he chose to use the abilities that the school was familiar with. He pulled out his wand and took down the creature with his water attack. A proud G was impressed by his talent, while Jerry here began to respect him more, and the sword instructor and Haiwan also seemed pleased. But the only problem was that despite his massive mana, his attack was too weak to deal any damage. He just gave the mouse a bath. If anything, Urion was amused by the scene, even though no damage was done. In his mind, he reflected that showing just a bit of power didn't affect his heart, but back then, even when he used a little strength, the pain in his heart would rise to unbearable levels. The only reason that happened was that he had channeled way too much power in that moment compared to what he had done. Right now, this meant that Urion was safe and smart enough to find a loophole around his limits. All he had to do was use a certain amount of power. This would ensure his heart remained unhurt, but the situation only worsened when 2 more giant mice appeared unexpectedly. Surrounding the student, the boy was lost in thought, quite curious to explore the exact limits of the loophole when suddenly he spotted something in the distance. This piece of metal was actually a sword beast, a level 2 creature, a mystical being happily hunting the monster mice. By slicing their bodies apart, Urion was amazed that the sword beast was taking out these creatures without much trouble, causing even the teachers to worry for the boy's safety. As the smoke cleared, Urion seemed to stand firm without a scratch. Thanks to his regeneration ability, even Jerry couldn't help but acknowledge how the boy survived a fatal blow. Without any injuries, thanks to his healing power, Urion was excited as he faced a creature worth 5 points and suddenly wondered how his sister was doing in the exam. Speaking of his sister, Ella and Jade were teaming up to take down an axe monster. I have to admit, the creative designs for these monsters are pretty cool. Jade wanted to defeat the monster right away so they could go help Urion. Since both of them suspect that the poor boy is definitely struggling to manage on his own, I think they should stop worrying about him and focus on the lumbering monster right in front of them, as this creature is building up a powerful swing to the point that Jade has to draw his demon sword just to block it. He doesn't understand why it's so strong given its overwhelming power. Ella joins the fight to help him. Both of them are doing their best to stop the explosion and succeed in pushing it back with their combined strength. Jade turns to thank Ella for her contribution in blocking the attack while they are here trying to become lovers. The lumbering monster is hovering right above them, watching everything unfold and probably dying of embarrassment. Jade is acting like a lovesick fool around Ella, who is so dazed from the previous attack that her hands can't stop shaking from fear. She realizes that the level 2 monsters are in a completely different league, and if her little brother happens to encounter one, he would be seriously injured despite his healing skills. Reinforcing her determination for the sake of her brother, Ella is determined to defeat this monster to help Urion. While Jade is ready to fight, as the duo prepares for round 2, they face a powerful level 2 monster. Both are confident in their abilities. They can't help but feel excited at the thought of defeating the monster, but unfortunately, their delusions quickly turn into despair as a creature, even beyond level 2, appears from the sky. It's a terrifyingly huge storm monster, even bigger than the level 2 lumbering monster. The observation during the exam continues, with each teacher showing great interest in his performance. Suddenly, the mystical orb cracks, leaving everyone puzzled. Even the magic expert G is astonished by what's happening. This situation raises a red flag since even the principal cannot comprehend the situation. The cracking of the orb only means one thing. A level 3 entity has appeared from thin air. And not just one, 3 of them appear at once. This situation is quite special in its own way, as the principal ponders about the forest only being home to level 1 and level 2 monsters. The forest was specifically chosen as the test for first-year students, knowing the minimal risks involved. And suddenly, a level 3 monster appears. Sensing danger, the principal prepares himself and orders Jerry, Ryan, BH, and Helen to go out and handle each area where incidents occur. Their main objective is to prioritize the safety of the students, since any harm that comes to them could jeopardize the future of the kingdom. Right after this scene, the enormous storm entity begins to devour everything in its path. The appearance of such a divine creature left Ella both terrified and speechless. The horror she felt in this moment assured her that she was facing a level 3 entity. This raised the question of how to attack something so colossal, contrasting with Ella's fear and helplessness. Jade remained steadfast even in the face of danger. He calmed her down, pointing out the obvious that the instructors were surely on their way to rescue them. All they needed to do was focus on survival, a reality that gave Ella a glimmer of hope, even though she's still worried about her brother's condition. Suddenly, the wind around them became so strong that it pulled Ella toward the creature, while Jade remained steady. Thanks to his wicked sword, he was doing his best to catch the lucky red-haired girl. Fortunately for them, they managed to grab each other. While Jade powered up his demonic sword, urging Ella to hold on tight, he was straining to keep his grip. He completely forgot that the axe entity was also trying to chop them down. The strike barely missed them by a few inches. Once again, both escaped death. Jade and Ella couldn't even catch their breath before being overwhelmed, something Jade nervously accepted. Right now, they were facing 2 creatures beyond their capabilities, and both were determined to fight, each gripping their weapon tightly. Ella and Jade charged forward for their only chance of survival, their main focus aimed at the axe monster. So, the user of the demonic sword adjusted his weapon into a shield form to block the monster's initial attack. The boy's confidence in his abilities rose to a new level. More importantly, this opportunity allowed Ella to sneak up with a brutal overhead slash that connected perfectly. She sliced the creature cleanly, but unfortunately, the entity was not defeated yet, as Ella only managed to cut part of its body. However, this was a significant breakthrough. As soon as she finished her attack, Jade charged in, recalling an emotional moment he shared with his mother before leaving for family purposes. The boy made her worry about the burden placed on him, but Jade reassured her that he was ready to take on the role of doing everything for the family's sake. However, his mother gently reminded him that he was not a pawn or a stepping stone for the family. Instead, she strongly advised him to use his strength to help himself, and those around him, after all, was their ultimate duty as users of the demonic sword. Those words echoed in his mind, and he remembered his battle with Laurel, where he had truly held back for fear that those stronger would hunt his family. If he messed up their mission, at the same time, if he let Larry go easily, his friends would be in danger. That's why the goal of that battle was not to win, but to use himself as a sacrifice and give his friends a chance to escape. The memories of his friends and siblings shone brightly one last time before Jade annihilated the axe-wielding monster with the extremely powerful first stage of the demon sword. Such an attack was unbelievable in Ella's eyes, leaving her shocked and wondering what her friend had just done. Jade's move just now was perplexing to her. Even though they had succeeded in killing the first level 2 monster, it didn't mean their worries were over. The storm monster was still here, and this time it was targeting Ella, who was unprotected. Both of them were sent flying. Throwing both into the air, Jade and Ella barely had time to process what had happened. At best, they could only hope to wonder. How they got thrown into the air like this was terrible, really terrible. At this height, neither of them could survive the fall. The fear in Ella's eyes was real, showing complete despair. And her ultimate wish was to reunite with her brother. Luckily, Urion arrived just in time. And although he helped his sister land like a princess, he left Jade to fall helplessly, the boy's eyes full of astonishment. Expressing excitement at finally encountering a level 3 monster, Jade regained his composure and remarked that he felt relieved to see the boy alive. He even told the boy that their teachers had started taking action, so all they needed to do was buy time and survive. But Urion was here for a blink and you miss it showdown with this monster. Believing it was best to hunt the monster for 20 points, Urion suggested taking it down as a team effort, but his words didn't reach Jade and Ella, who were wondering if he had lost his mind, especially when he was staring at a terrifying creature in front of him while his sister began to form an impression that her brother was much braver than she was. In fact, the boy was drooling with excitement at the thought of earning 20 precious points. Let's go back to the part where the boy faced not only the sword-wielding monster but also the large rats. Urion understood that he could only reveal a normal amount of power to meet his heart's condition. The hard part was how much strength he could exert at once. Fortunately, at that moment, observation orbs appeared and burst forth from thin air, the only thing that truly concerned him. No longer a burden to him, thanks to that he could freely do anything he wanted while thinking about the safety of others. The nasty rat tried to sneak up from behind to launch a surprise attack. Urion irritably slapped the monster's head, considering it a nuisance while he was talking. As for the sword-wielding monster, Bro was wondering how this boy could be so strong. Urion was just glad nothing was holding him back anymore. Now that the cameras were off, it was unfortunate that he couldn't check his normal ability standards at the same time. If the cameras were off, it also meant he didn't have to keep any monsters alive anymore. And by the way, while he was saying all this, the one-sided massacre had ended. The sword-wielding monster had indeed been annihilated. While Urion was giving a small speech, he was genuinely happy to enjoy his power, but suddenly he heard his sister's screams. This led him to run to save her. Now let's return to G's perspective, who was doing his best to heal the crystal orbs. While the principal emphasized the urgency of the task, this situation was astonishing even for her, especially since many observation tools had been destroyed abruptly. This is not a normal event, even with the presence of a level 3 monster. There's another issue. The orbs are unusually hard to repair. This only made her wonder what was really happening behind the scenes. Back to the fight between Urion and the natural disaster, the boys suggested they hunt that creature together. But just then, the storm monster inhaled a large amount of air before unleashing a powerful push. It was so strong that it actually propelled Jade to the next planet. Bro slammed into a tree with a heavy hit, and if his back wasn't shattered into a million pieces after this, I would be very surprised. Ella looked worried at his injuries, but before anything worse could happen, Urion's instant healing magic took effect immediately, restoring all the damage. Jade was really happy because they would have to use a lot of that magic if they wanted to defeat a level 3 monster. Fortunately, he now understood Urion's mission. Their hunting goal wasn't to kill that creature. With that thought in mind, Jade rushed forward at incredible speed. Ella supported him in this effort. Their main goal was to attack and neutralize that creature as best as they could. If they tried to run away, everything would end up disastrous like last time, as escaping from a level 3 monster is nearly impossible. The sensible approach is to attack, keeping it busy with as many strikes as they are doing right now and focusing on protecting each other's blind spots. That's the goal, but ironically, Urion realized that maybe his plan wasn't as perfect as he thought, because Ella and Jade would have to take painful hits and try to score 20 points for themselves. If only they could run away, Urion could secretly hunt and enjoy all the points. Anyway, both were slashing at that monster with tremendous power, while Urion fell into a contemplative state, wondering how he could contribute to the fight. Fortunately, Ricky, the crazy guy, appeared and cast a spell. Using the power of the wind spirits to create a gigantic sword spell, he launched the sword at incredible speed, piercing the body of the storm creature as it cut its way through the wind. While Jade and Ella were in shock, Ricky praised them for being truly brave and standing up against a level 3 monster on their own. He compared them to brave knights in a way that our boy here was even angrier that Ricky alone had taken down the level 3 monster, and finally scored points for himself. Jade didn't like that either, believing they were making steady progress in hunting the creature, so it's not nice for Ricky to intervene. Humorously, Urion shares Jade's view and expresses his complaint. Tian's brother messed up everything they had clearly planned. Ricky didn't expect any of this. He's a pretty laid-back guy, to the point where he allows them to keep points for themselves, causing Urion, the noble swordsman, to smile. He believes it's pointless to take points from other talented students who will contribute to the kingdom's future. The problem is, even if Ricky sounds noble here, he was a completely different kid just a year ago, like all the other nobles. He underestimated farmers and commoners, but after a humble encounter with the masked swordsman, his perspective changed. A curious Ricky challenged them to a duel, outlining that he would allow them to keep all the points if they could show even a fraction of the power Urias had, though Urion and Ella looked astonished. Tian's brother admitted that the commoners this year belonged to a completely different breed, especially when it came to that masked swordsman. Ricky felt that a specially accepted student like Urion might possess similar abilities as that guy, and before that happened, he wanted to help our boy follow the right path. His duel was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a creature haunting humans every day. The presence of this creature was so terrifying that it horrified Ricky and everyone else. This creature had many grimacing faces and arms, simply stating that it had no interest in dying in the next second. Its impact on Ricky, Jade, and Ella caused each of them to horrifically draw their weapons from their necks. They brutally slashed their own throats, while Urion looked on in horror. Unable to accept his sister's death, he immediately healed them before they completely left, then turned to the ugly, multi-faced monster. Asking about its identity, the creature replied that it was the force driving the doom of all humans, the very thing that people fear most in their lives. Meet Depression, a level 4 monster even more powerful than a natural disaster. Once again, Depression's presence was enough to shatter Jade's composure, causing him to vomit in fear. Have you ever seen Ricky show real fear? Well, right now, he's trembling like he's having a panic attack. In that brief moment, he processed what had happened seconds ago. He had stabbed himself, and there was nothing he could do to stop it while Urion was currently analyzing the physical form of the level 4 entity, subtly observing how Depression seemed to have scars around its wrists and neck. But even an absolute creature of sorrow like Depression was surprised to realize that Urion remained unaffected under its influence. Our boy finally felt offended by being asked such a sensitive question, but Depression thought it was perfectly normal. After all, humans could never resist its influence. As it controlled them, Urion couldn't help but sneer while Ricky struggled to approach and talk to him. It pointed out that the boy had a godlike ability since just now, Urion not only saved them from the brink of death, he also healed their psychological trauma that would have haunted them for life. The truth is, Ricky now knows how precious Urion's power is. For the sake of the kingdom, that's why he was willing to sacrifice his life just to protect him and unleash the power of the wind spirit. Ricky unleashed his thunderous wrath, but best to say, Depression only felt delighted seeing a child blessed by the power of a spirit. Ricky, upon activating the power of the wind spirit, felt deeply offended when a beast dared to speak its name while Urion was being blown away by the wind, internalizing that only a level 4 creature could speak intelligently and possess personality. Depression mocked Ricky's comment because clearly, it was not just an ordinary monster like any beast they had faced so far. Before Ricky could understand what a level 4 creature was doing here, Depression stealthily approached his face, humming words like before, a plea to not die. In that moment, Ricky's body completely relinquished control, as did Ella and Jade, as each one plunged their necks in painful submission, all except Urion, who was beginning to get angry that this creature was killing his friends. Even Depression, the ultimate monster with incredible power, was fearful before the boys' energy release. Urion quickly healed them, while the entity realized that their recovery was no longer a miracle. As our boy protected his sister in anxiety, fear was lurking around him, declaring that it would kill the boy first, as he was a major obstacle to their plan. In response, Ricky continued to show extraordinary determination. He roared that Urion must live no matter what happens. This time, the swordsman realized that Depression's attack barely affected Urion, pointing out that he had magical resistance like a god. Both his instant healing ability and resistance showed he was comparable to a heroic knight, far beyond normal students. Unfortunately, Depression aimed to kill Urion. As it moved in to end his life, the wind swordsman fearfully roared in worry. In that moment, Jade appeared with her ultimate move. It was the first appearance of the monster sword, but even that incomprehensible attack couldn't do anything against the level 4 monster. This left the boy feeling frustrated. Right now, their best chance was to help Urion escape, but what good would that do? When Depression was ready to take his life, realizing that Ricky had to handle everything alone, he controlled the wind, and pulled all three into a floating state, launching them away. Urion began to feel bored with Ricky's futile efforts. So, you suddenly remember that Ricky is actually Tien's brother, just like before when Tien threw you away to save you. Both brothers had the same strategy in this situation, ensuring their own demise, but it made the Depression plan for the next kill. Frustrated, he asks why the wind swordsman refuses to run. Ricky lets out a disappointed laugh, admitting that no one can escape the entity's grasp. So, in his final resistance, he plans to hold the level 4 monster as best as he can. Before a warrior or hero arrives on the battlefield, the entity accepts this reality and humorously asks if the boy is waiting for a hero to save him, especially since Ricky looks like he's about to cry. I'm not lying. I know it seems like Ricky has to be a cool side character, but this is a great way to showcase the terrifying nature of his opponent. Despite his trembling state, the boy desperately pleads for his body to hold out for at least 3 seconds. In those meaningful 3 seconds, he channels the power of the strong wind spirit, unleashing a roaring dragon from the sky. It really reminds me of Sasuke's Sharingan attack that he used against Itachi. Anyway, the level 4 monster didn't see that attack coming. Even if the attack hit, the terrifying entity calmly acknowledged the situation was very desperate for Ricky. Especially since the entity hasn't even used a real attack yet, Ricky knows deep down that there's no hope for him, no way he can survive. Or that's what he thought, because at that moment Ryan B appeared like a flash, realizing they were facing a much stronger monster. Compared to an ordinary level 3 monster, Depression didn't want to introduce itself again while the sword teacher draws out his first technique. Meanwhile, Jade and Ella have just regained consciousness, and our boy is casually observing the scene, hovering in the air like a god in the form of a level 4 monster. It poses a threat to every student present, realizing this is a completely emergency situation. The swordsman uses a magical technique, creating the giant wings of a butterfly, emitting a deafening wave of wind. The gust is so strong that Ricky can hardly endure it. For the level 4 monster, it's just a minor annoyance. The problem is that deafening sound serves as a signal. Reaching the principal's office, he realizes that the signal comes from the sword teacher. While Jade calls him back to inform him of an important discovery, she talks about how things are getting worse, and even if this creature is supposed to be a level 3 monster, it shouldn't cause this much damage. She senses that this entity is also responsible for severing all communication. Realizing this, the principal immediately contacts Haiwan, hoping to connect with her. Not receiving a response from Haiwan, the principal pieces together what has happened so far. Not just a level 3 creature appearing unexpectedly, but all the surveillance balls were irreparably destroyed. With so much evidence, the principal thinks it's foolish to assume that everything that happened was just a simple coincidence. Only a level 4 monster could pose such a significant threat to everyone involved, but that makes him question the intent behind the monster's appearance. There's no reason for such a creature to show up during a normal exam. Anyway, the principal is very angry and radiates his golden aura. He decides to take GE with him to rescue the kids before the Royal Knights can act, and in the worst-case scenario, the principal hopes that Ryuambi can protect himself for as long as possible. Back at the battlefield, the dignified swordmaster is trying to fight the entity. Depression scoffs, amused, wondering if this man really thinks he poses any threat to such an entity. In fact, even the sword teacher is no more than an insect before it. The creature tries to reach out to grab him. Ricky anxiously screams his teacher's name, who impressively holds his ground and charges with astonishing speed, materializing his wind sword. Butterfly Man attempts to execute a precise slash, but just as he's about to make his move, Depression is a step faster and grabs his body, crushing it to dust. But surprisingly, the butterfly swordsman appears from behind, trying to attack again. Depression angrily uses its oversized hand to block him once more. Ryan immediately runs away and appears from another spot, and mocks the level 4 monster for being so slow and pathetic. Even from Ricky's perspective, his teacher is currently moving at an incredible speed, to the point where he can barely track his teacher's movements. At this moment, the master's extraordinary speed is impressive enough to make Ricky believe his teacher will win this battle until Ryan Peace Blade is just inches away from slicing the entity. A sense of horror envelops his body. Depression has just used the same self-inflicted spell he used earlier. Ricky knows this is bad news when the swordsman stabs himself in the leg. Only after stabbing himself does he realize what happened. This is the true power of absolute coercion, the ability to override someone's will and force them to take their own life with the sword. The teacher is kneeling at his feet. Depression mocks him for being unable to maintain the confidence he had before. By this point, even the sword teacher has been drawn into a state of despair. Completely horrified, his heart cannot help but envision this disastrous entity as a creature that has rendered him powerless. Still, Ryunbi maintains his resolve and limps while standing up, questioning the monster's target. Level 4 creatures are usually extremely rare, so the sudden appearance of one might be for a greater reason. Feeling that humanity is trying to stall time and gather information, the Depression mocks him, but he's so confident in his victory that he reveals a single goal: to bring all of humanity to complete extinction. Ricky screams at his master to try to run, begging him to do so while he still can. Even Ryumbi starts to humble himself and realizes he can't contain a level 4 monster. Luckily, no students have been killed so far, so the best outcome is to return to the kingdom and report the creature's appearance, but that plan only sounds good in theory, as the entity has restrained both of them in an embrace, forcing them to kneel to the point of suffocation. The entity enjoys the sight and prepares to end them with its embrace, horrified, praying for their death. As the details prepare to touch one of them, Ricky's sister senses his presence from afar. At this moment, the Depression is blinded by a brilliant light. The dazzling light emanating from Ricky's body is a woman like a fairy, possessing 3 sets of wings. She is the wind spirit from whom the wind swordsman draws strength. Sensing the arrogance of the Depression, the mighty wind spirit decides to dethrone him by destroying his branch in an instant. Before the Depression can process what is happening, he experiences a terrifying encounter. The issue is that the mighty spirit is hovering in front of him, as one of the 4 mightiest spirits in the entire world, and although the wind spirit is known as the most selfish among them, she has come to save Ricky, restoring his lost fragments. The Depression shrinks back in fear and addresses the Great Spirit with respect, questioning why a being of her caliber would choose to intervene in the affairs of this world. It cannot understand why she would come to save a human. Let's zoom in and truly understand the importance of the mighty spirits in this world. Everything in nature is governed by 4 powerful spirits, and among them, why is it the most selfish one? She reveals her intentions, sharing that she has come here on her own to negotiate with the trash entity. The depression questions the meaning of the word negotiate that she intends to imply. She responds requesting the survival of both Rionbai and Ricky, and if he could let them live, she promises not to interfere in his work when it comes to killing other people. The fact that a spirit of her caliber has come down herself to negotiate with a level 4 monster is truly an honor in front of the depression. The creature cannot believe she's doing all this, because 2 humans are insignificant. It's funny that the girl's logic is that both look cute. That's really the only reason she keeps them alive. But that cannot be said about the ugly depression. This entity questions why a powerful spirit would intervene in the issues of their ecosystem. We gently remind him that he is not the one to decide what she does. She makes an easy offer. Either he could be eliminated by her and fail to achieve his true goal, or he could accept the offer. Depression takes a moment to question his chances, wondering whether he was being threatened or shown an escape. Unfortunately, choosing a fight with a powerful spirit over a bunch of people was a massive risk, even for a level 4 monster. At the same time, Depression began to realize that something about Ricky or Rayambay was special, because that's the only reason a powerful spirit would even care to descend and intervene on their behalf. It's a terrifying truth for Depression. It fears that these two would become extremely powerful in the future, which is why it hurried to eliminate them first, hoping to disrupt the Wind Spirit's plans for the future. But that was the stupidest mistake it could make. The Wind Spirit wasn't afraid of anything and simply called Depression a fool. With just a light wave, she wiped him out and tore him into a Kit Kat piece, the Wind Spirit, ensuring he was misunderstanding his own value due to the negotiation she proposed. So as a punishment, she intended to eliminate this creature 4 more times. The bloodbath began and ended within the next 4 blasts. We emphasize her importance as a powerful spirit, reminding Depression that eliminating him would be almost effortless. Completely. In this way, the once unstoppable creature was reduced to a pile of muck. Of course, Depression quickly regenerated and reassembled, this time accepting the powerful spirit's offer. Believing his long-term goal was much more important, he spoke as if he were extremely significant, while the Wind Spirit simply told him to vanish. Upon hearing her, the level 4 monster instantly disappeared. As for us, she sensed that the monsters had begun to act. More importantly, the girl was here choking Ricky's unconscious state. The poor kid was unconscious, and she was trying to punch him back to life. Fortunately, we were just happy to see him okay. The fairy then glanced at the sword instructor, who looked quite pathetic from how he was knocked out. She was quite surprised that the sword instructor still refused to use the full power of the Wind Spirit. Returning to the perspective of Depression, extremely angry for having to concede to a powerful spirit, the guy was humiliated and seething over the fact that this creature was angry for experiencing a failure in its objectives, but ultimately decided to choose an alternative. Instead of killing Ricky and his master, he could always kill the remaining students who were testing. To satisfy his heart, full of rage and fear, Depression coldly declared to kill every student in the forest. Or at least that's what he thought, because at that moment, a massive column of energy shot up into the sky. Desperation struck until he saw the one responsible emitting such a tremendous amount of energy. That's Urion, the boy from before. But this version of Urion is in beast mode because he's angry about the hesitation in protecting his beloved sister. At the cost of hiding his power, Desperation acts confidently, thrilled to see that boy again. He assures the boy that no matter how far he runs, that creature will catch up because of its own excitement. The level 4 creature welcomes the boy into a world of despair, its 2 limbs quickly gripping Urion's neck, choking him. While excited, it reveals that those influenced by it deeply desire a chance to escape. The boy lets the level 4 creature enjoy itself, before it can tighten its grip with a hold strong enough to tear him apart. Urion coldly reminds the desperate creature that he's done. Hearing those suicidal words, staring at the level 4 creature with an unfazed tone, Urion mocks it for its insignificance. Anger, Desperation unleashes a network of limbs, trying to grasp the boy in a desperate attempt, but Urion fears nothing, recalling his sister. Just pointing a sword at its neck is enough to make him angry. Through this, he also understands the power he can unleash. With one punch, Urion completely obliterates despair, erasing it from existence. After the incident with the level 4 monster, the kingdom holds an emergency meeting. The principal reports the entire event to King Bradness, including how the students and teachers fought fiercely. He adds that they fainted afterward and were possibly saved by the Great Healer. Count Dre adds that he might have fought a level 4 since the forest looks like it was nuclearized. Count Reyes agrees, and points out that the monsters have become much stronger, causing the nobles to panic because if the great spirits struggle like this, they think they are completely doomed. But then Xerxes tells them to stop whining like children as he reminds them they are in front of the king. A man with perfect hair, like he stepped out of a shampoo commercial, appears next and declares that humanity has also grown stronger thanks to system upgrades, and now the knights are stronger than ever. Zia Lefton, commander of the Royal Knights, proclaims that humanity will never kneel before monsters. The king supports him with a statement saying humans are extremely resilient. He instructs the principal to lock down any path that the monster may have used to sneak in and tells the knights and nobles to be ready to protect civilians. Then the mayors stand up to raise another issue, and the king allows him to speak, The principal states that although the annual friendly competition is approaching, they should cancel it this year. The king smiles and asks if that's the annual competition where their students compete against the Empire's students based on skill. The principal confirms this and explains that the monster activity is currently so chaotic that postponing it would be wise. But the fat Marquis was immediately pressed when he mentioned the Empire's statement, sarcastically praising their quick response to the monster attack, and hoped they would participate in this year's friendly competition. Marquis Reyes insisted they couldn't back down if the Empire was so arrogant. Some nobles pointed out that the Empire was on a losing streak and perhaps just wanted an easy victory this year, while the mages held their ground, and warned them that fourth ranks were not foolish beasts and this attack was meticulously planned. But the fat Marquis got angry and shouted that retreating meant giving up their dominance in the monster war. Mages countered that risking student lives wasn't worth it, but Marquis Reyes seemed overly confident that they could deploy the army in time. Zerda sided with him and said that monsters wouldn't dare to attack if knights were present, but mages reminded them of the recent incident and asked what if history repeated itself. The fat noble laughed mockingly and asked if mages was saying the Empire was too weak to fight. At that moment, the king silenced everyone with a polite silence. He agreed that it was too dangerous to advance without knowing the monster's motives, but if they retreated, the Empire could start political negotiations with other nations against them. King Brehadina said they were stuck at a crossroads, so he suggested asking the students directly. This left the mages stunned, but the king insisted and ordered him to bring in those who had fought against the fourth ranks, along with Urion later. Urion found himself in the meeting and wondered what the hell was going on with all the summoned people. Everyone was bowing to the king as Magus introduced them. The king told them to lift their heads and praise their bravery, asserting that their actions had secured peace for the kingdom. Although Urion wasn't sure about that, while some nobles couldn't stop discussing how he was a commoner, the king clarified that he hadn't summoned them for rewards. Instead, he mentioned the friendly competition, explaining its role in maintaining international relations and attracting attention from other nations, but revealed the secret that it actually showcased a nation's strength, with the winner receiving a major sponsor and high expectations. But this year, they were considering retreating due to the high risk of monsters attacking again. Mentioning the fourth rank made Ricky feel heavy. As he recalled the battle and began to sweat, the king noticed and asked why Ricky looked paler than Michael Jackson, then allowed them to speak freely, but the team remained silent, leaving the nobles to wonder if they were dealing with their near-death experience. Durian guessed that if no one spoke up, the pride of the magic school would be shattered and the competition would be as good as lost. So he stood up and began by thanking the king for allowing him to attend this meeting. He said he wanted to say something related to the competition. He explained that all three had faced a level 4 inches a fierce battle, but none of them were afraid, and they had overcome it together. If another level 4 appeared, they would definitely show everyone that they could defeat it. The nobles immediately began to buzz, like curious ants at a family gathering, but the king just burst out laughing and said that bringing Urion here was a great choice. That reaction left Urion feeling confused, but the king continued that he was appointing Urion as the official representative of the kingdom in the friendly competition. That announcement threw the nobles into complete chaos, while Urion stood there silently. As he tried to understand what the hell just happened, the fat noble immediately began to complain that the king needed to reconsider because the friendship competition was a serious matter, and letting an ordinary person be the main representative might not be the smartest decision. Magus wasted no time to rebut, reminding the fat noble that Urion wasn't just some random guy, but a special grade magic student, making him sweat like crazy. At that moment, Ricky stood up and told everyone that Urion was no joke. He had faced a level 4 attack and still stood strong, thanks to his instant recovery ability, and he was sure Urion would shine in the competition, which made the guy blush. But before the moment could settle, a voice called out that instant recovery was basically a scam and just a glorified version of old healing magic. The Marquis continued as if he were an important figure, saying that this skill only helped the body recover naturally and didn't heal wounds directly, so it was highly likely just a trick. He claimed that Ricky might have been attacked by illusion magic, which nearly drove the Silver Knight mad. But Magus interrupted, mocking the Marquis that his understanding of magic was not absolute, and that jab left the whole room silent. Magus then suggested resolving the issue with a live demonstration, but the nobles still looked unconvinced, so he calmly requested Urion to show them. The guy was still wondering why things were happening this way, but then took a deep breath and confidently declared that instant recovery was real. That surprised everyone. Viscount Zerda suddenly rolled up his chubby arm and showed a scar that had been there for 4 years. Although it had been treated, he asked if Urion's magic could completely erase it, but Magus pointed out that Urion's magic was for wounds, not for scars. But the fat noble continued to speak, that they couldn't risk harming someone if there was still a possibility it was all fake. The Marquis still tried to sound like an expert and said, a scar is technically a wound, so if the magic is real, it should work. Mayhas clearly didn't like that arrogant reasoning, but Urion didn't care and agreed to do it, because he was also very curious. Ignoring the principal's objections, Urion stepped forward and cast the spell on the Viscount's arm, and immediately, the scar disappeared. Zardis looked at his arm as if seeing it for the first time. As he stammered that now it was as smooth as a baby's skin, This left the other nobles gaping. Even the king looked surprised. While a noble asked Xerxes if it really had disappeared, he nodded in disbelief. Even his sore throat felt better now, confirming this was no cheap illusion, and he declared that the instant recovery was 100% real. Zia Lefton, the enthusiastic commander, excitedly stated that this was a revolutionary discovery because if used on the battlefield or even in daily life, this ability could change everything further if they could scale it up. It could truly advance Urion's medical technology, and he was also pleased that it worked on scars until Butterball interrupted again, asking how many times he could use it in a day. Urion took a few seconds and casually replied that he could use it up to 3 times a day. Viscount Reyes looked stunned for a moment but quickly became greedy, asking if Urion could remove the scars on his skin. The other nobles immediately stopped him for crossing the line, while Ricky continued to admire Urion as if he had just witnessed a miracle. The king silenced the room again and announced that since Urion's power was now confirmed, there would be no objections to his role as representative. He declared his full support for Urion and assured that he would graduate from the magic school with the principal's backing. Turning to our boy, the king ordered him to represent the kingdom with pride and dedicate his life to serving it. Urion accepted with a forced smile, but then the king surprised him again by asking if he wanted to be friends with his daughter, which he hesitantly agreed to. The next day at school, Chris completely flipped out when Urion received royal recognition and was chosen as the representative. Ella and Jade also heard the news and were shocked. While Chris looked like he had hemorrhoids, he paced back and forth, claiming that the nobles would never recognize his power and demanded a fight to prove himself. But Jade reminded him that it was the king who approved Urion. However, Urion remained unfazed as usual and agreed to participate in the fight, leaving both his classmates completely stunned as they prepared to duel like Chris, who was clearly choking with jealousy, demanding that our boy give up his representative title if he lost in the duel. Everyone watched with excitement as this surprise match unfolded, and Rizzo casually grabbed popcorn as if he were sitting front row at a movie premiere. Jade and Ella cheered while Hina debated whether to intervene but secretly found herself too excited, since she was standing right next to Princess Surti, pointing out that the match should be allowed to take place as even the teachers were present, and Haiwan quietly performed her referee duties as if it were just an ordinary Tuesday. Urion questioned whether it was really okay for the teachers to look so relaxed while Princess Surti kept a closer watch on him since her father had personally nominated him as representative. Haiwan calmly sets the rules and clarifies that the match must proceed without harming anyone in the process. She checks if both sides agree, and while Chris nods, he adds that there will be broken bones if no teacher is present. This prompts Urion to bring his obsession to light as Haiwan conjures a table in mid-air with magic, announcing that the match will be decided by a coin toss. Confusing both opponents right from the start, she explains that whoever pushes the coin toward the opponent and keeps it there for a full 5 seconds will win. However, it can only be moved using magic, and if it flies off the table, that will be an immediate disqualification. Goliath wonders why the rules sound like a kid's game, while Rizzo replies that it only seems simple when it's actually quite challenging. Mew chimes in with a clarification that you basically need to overpower the other person to control the coin, and Saya adds that if you try too hard, the coin will shoot away and you will lose. Jade adds that you can even intentionally reduce your strength to trick your opponent into making a mistake, and Sturdy realizes that this is more about mind games than brute strength. This immediately makes Ella anxious, while Chris makes a smug remark about always wanting to crush our boy, who just smiles and tells him to prove it with results. He even thanks them for this match, which also serves as a free testing ground for midterm experiments. Just before the round begins, Chris quietly outlines his plan to trap the coin within his own magic field, so that no one else can touch it, just locking it down on our boy's side as he begins to panic, allowing him to sit back and watch Urion crumble. As the match is about to start, both players take their positions, and as soon as it begins, Chris wastes no time and unleashes a powerful spell while telling the normals to stay in their lane, which immediately leaves Goliath agape at the speed things escalate. Rizzo realizes that anyone in Chris's position would try a similar move because normals typically have weaker magic, but the very next second leaves Chris bewildered, as he discovers the coin is sitting right in his formation. Urion stands there looking completely unfazed while Haiwan begins the countdown. Mew comments that the boy's quick and precise control looks impressive, and Sia admits it doesn't match her sister's level, though it's still pretty good. Chris starts sweating, wondering why this coin now feels like it's weighing a mountain. He recalls a kind of overwhelming magic from the entrance exam, straining hard to push the coin to the other side. The crowd watches closely as the coin finally begins to move, but the tension breaks when Ricky points out that Urion is just teasing by pulling it slowly to distract Chris. Chris falls into a daze, trying to figure out the trick the normal is using as the coin forms into a giant T shape, and suspected there was some encoded message, while our boy couldn't stop laughing because it made absolutely no sense, and the countdown was reset without giving Chris a second to breathe. Chris gritted his teeth and channeled all his strength to push the coin through. But Rizzo immediately realized that the guy was clearly losing control and triggered what Hina called a full-blown magical rage. Jade yelled at Ella to stay behind him, and even he reacted quickly, warning everyone to be careful because things could explode at any moment. Urion, as usual, seemed unfazed, praised Chris's spirit, saying the guy really knew how to go all out. He raised his hand and clenched a fist in front of him, and just like that, the wild magic in the arena dropped to zero. Everyone stood still in shock as the chaos suddenly vanished while Lady Hersha looked impressed. But the hero finally understood what she meant when she talked about the true limits of his power. Goliath nervously asked what just happened, while Rizzo happily munched on popcorn, fully enjoying the chaos but wondering if Chris had planned all of this. It turned out our boy had managed to contain the entire explosion, although Hina found it unbelievable due to the madness and unstable power of the magical rage. When she noticed the smug little smile on his face, she began to doubt whether it really was impossible after all, while Urion recalled the entrance exam where he couldn't control the intensity of his power. Even though someone saw through his hidden power, his heart didn't explode at that moment. The same thing just happened again. Because Haiwan clearly understood what he just executed, he recalled the incident at the orphanage. If he used too much power, his heart felt like it was about to burst. The rule was very simple. If his power was exposed, he would die, but now he realized that the standard for power was never defined. He looked up at the ceiling and called out to Herja, asking if the standard measured was really the heroes in heaven. Herja finally smiled, and satisfied that our boy had connected the dots, he confirmed his theory that her rule meant if someone exhibited power beyond that of a hero, their heart would explode. But since this world had been a mess due to the mix of humans and all kinds of non-human species, the balance holding everything together was very fragile in this carefully maintained ecosystem. If the human side suddenly had overwhelming power, the whole world could collapse. Her expression softened as she said that Urion would bring peace to this world with that very power and quietly wished he found peace on his solitary warrior journey. In the classroom, our boy was casting a healing spell on the noble, who sneezed back from the dead and looked around, clearly confused and trying to figure out what the hell just happened. He asked if he had to give up. Meanwhile, Rizzo stood by with the cruelest smile, mocking him mercilessly. The noble finally pieced everything together and remembered he had been in a fight before passing out. He then looked over to see Urion being praised by his classmates. That sight burned him from the inside. He punched the floor and shouted that the friendship competition was a major event tied to the pride of the kingdom. That's why the outcome mattered more than status. Swallowing his pride, the once arrogant noble admitted defeat to Urion. This made Hee-won smile as she told him that learning to accept failure was an important part of becoming stronger and praised him for doing well. Urion glanced at him and silently thanked him for this match, which helped him understand his true standard of strength. Haiwan then returned to lecture mode. She announced that the friendly match with the Empire had officially been confirmed, stating it would involve 10 students from each school. Participating in a traditional competition, she began listing the names of the first-year representatives selected. Starting strong with Yuri, who was personally chosen by the king, she praised his excellent healing skills. This would definitely help the team. Next was Princess Surti, the top student in the class, who basically had no weaknesses. Following her was Ricky, who was currently daydreaming about Urion, while Hai Yuan highlighted his top-notch abilities, as if she were reading a product advertisement. Last but not least were Sia and Mew, who clearly saw this coming. They stepped up without a hint of surprise, while Hee-won added that when these two worked together, they truly were the strongest. With that, the chosen representatives lined up at the front of the class, sporting their brand new uniforms, but Ryoza was not buying it. He said he didn't care about being a representative, but wanted to know what the selection criteria were. He claimed he was stronger than the whole lineup. Hyo-won just smirked, saying he must be very curious, and then bluntly stated that there were no official criteria at all. Aside from Urion, the other 4 representatives were chosen because they had defeated a level 3 monster. Jade was almost shocked right on the spot, realizing that there were many more outstanding individuals in this school than just Princess Sturdy and Ricky. The twins puffed up with pride. Meanwhile, Hee-won added that normally they followed a strict process to select representatives, but a first-year student defeating a level 3 monster was quite surprising, to the extent of breaking the whole system. Although Rizzo didn't seem convinced, Urion recalled that before this year, there's only one other first-year student who ever defeated a level 3 monster, and that's their senior Deus. Goliath and Hina are both amazed by this record. As Ella lowered her gaze, recalling the terrifying level 3 tornado monster she once fought, she clenched her fist and silently vowed to herself that she would become strong enough to stand by Urion as his only Nuna. Meanwhile, Urion seemed a bit annoyed by the childish design of their new uniforms. Before he could complain, Mew approached and called his name, boldly inviting him out. This nearly made her sister and Ella faint right on the spot. Mew kept her energy high, saying that with their combined strength, they could go from the strongest to champions in no time. She even proposed that Urion could earn a noble title, but he just looked at her as if she were a walking disaster. The rejection was immediate and brutal as he turned her down on the spot, saying that marriage should only happen between those who truly love each other, and that she was too young to be talking about such things right now. Sia walked straight up to Urion and warned him to be careful, but Mew admitted he was right, and she really had forgotten that important part when it came to marriage. Sia looked at her in disbelief. But just then, Haiwan appeared in a completely different outfit and announced that it was time for everyone to pack up. Mina seemed a bit lost about what was happening, and Goliath wondered where she got that outfit from. Hiwa cheerfully explained that they were all heading to the Empire and said that technically they should have left this morning, but the unexpected battle had delayed everything a bit. Urion began to wonder if everything was moving too fast. After a while, the class finally arrived at the Empire, and Ella immediately started glowing in awe of everything around her. She took in the scenery in amazement, and wondered if this was the real feeling of life in the Empire. The smell of food was irresistible, so she flew towards it like a moth to a flame, while Jade followed behind, wagging her tail, unable to contain her excitement at the golden opportunity to destroy Iowan. She informed everyone that there were some matters to handle first and guided the others around G. However, Jade was still lost in her own happy world, and this time, she felt grateful not to be chosen as a representative, sensing this as an opportunity to get closer. She asked him if he had ever eaten grilled clams, and that immediately caught her attention. He began strongly convincing her that seafood was a specialty of the Empire, and the grilled clams here tasted amazing. Then he suggested taking her out to eat a bit. She agreed without hesitation, and he assured her it wouldn't take long if they ate quickly, and he really wanted to treat her. But just then, Chris suddenly appeared and said he preferred shrimp, completely surprising Jade. The blonde boy saw Ella's excited reaction and teased her, asking if she had never eaten shrimp before, and then continued talking about how delicious the shrimp in the Empire is. Jade tightened her pendant and wondered what the issue was with this noble guy. He chimed in and argued that the Emperor crab is even better than shrimp, which made Ella's eyes light up with joy. He was really exaggerating. He said that the Emperor crab would be perfect for someone noble like her and emphasized again that he really wanted to treat her. Chris immediately interjected. He said that he also loves Emperor crab and wants to go with her. Jade looked at him coldly and said emotionlessly that only 2 people could go, so he could find someone else. Chris retorted that there's nothing he can't do and smugly said that he would just charm the owner. Meanwhile, Rizzo walked to the back mumbling about how noisy it was getting while Hina waved them on to continue. Chris looked at the group and said that wandering randomly in a strange place wasn't a smart move, while Jade silently prayed he would heed his own advice and turn back. At that moment, a loud voice interrupted the scene asking who was making the racket. A trio of strange-looking warriors approached with the one in front. Demanding to know if they were from the kingdom, Jade immediately recognized the uniforms and confirmed they were students from the Royal Magic Academy. The guy started to mock them for coming from an elite class but still had someone wearing a black badge. The 2 henchmen immediately began to taunt them about the kingdom, saying they must be desperate to recruit commoners. Jade warned them to be careful with what they said because Ella surpassed any of them, but the nerd just scoffed and said, no filthy commoner could ever be better than them. The trio then began their prepared introduction script, but Jade only remarked that the guy in the turban must be one of the representatives of the match. Chris stepped up with a mocking smile and taunted them, saying that trash like them couldn't belong to the elite class of the Empire. Ella and Jade burst out laughing while the trio began to get angry as they clearly couldn't accept a joke. The guy in the turban especially wouldn't back down and challenge them. He yelled at his 2 friends to show them the true power of the Empire as they charged in. Ella immediately said she would handle them herself. This made Jade feel a bit uneasy. Chris didn't even blink and commented that this morning's fight made these guys look like kids. While Ella kept sweeping the floor with them, the guy with glasses ended up on the ground with a nosebleed, and Ella mocked him, pointing out they seemed too slow and weak to be elite material. Baru, the guy in the turban, got angry and told his henchmen to retreat for embarrassing themselves. Then he drew 2 stone swords and declared he was about to show the true power of the Empire. But before he could step forward, a giant monster appeared behind him, making him freeze in place. It turned out Jade had activated the demon sword technique, and calmly warned him that it wouldn't be easy if he was still determined to fight. Baru started sweating profusely, and wondered what kind of nightmare magic this was. He then asked why Jade wasn't one of the representatives, which left him confused with a smile. He replied that they had more impressive people on their side, while Ella promised they wouldn't lose at any cost, which nearly fried Baru's brain as he stood there wondering, who said this kingdom had no talent this year? Just then, another voice rang out, asking Baru if he was scared right now, she repeated, and questioned whether the Empire students were really afraid of some kids from the kingdom. The trio started panicking and denying it. But Rise was no longer patient with them. She tightened her fists and accused them of tarnishing the Empire's name. Then she unleashed a massive energy blast at them, nearly scaring them to death, but a giant shield appeared just in time to block it. Baru looked around in shock, realizing he wasn't hurt, and demanded to know what Jade thought she was doing, but Jade just ignored him and spoke to Ryu, saying that the last attack could have seriously injured them if he hadn't blocked it. The cold-eyed ice girl replied that he hadn't blocked anything, because that was just a warm-up. She began to gather another powerful magical explosion and declared that this one was the real finishing blow. Jade powered up again and loudly stated that this was definitely getting out of control. Jade quickly created another shield. While Ryose finished gathering the next attack, Chris unexpectedly added a bit of her magic to help reinforce it, which only made her more annoyed. She reacted, asking if they really thought they could block even a small part of her spell. Just then, she fired it off, and Jade immediately panicked as she realized her shield couldn't hold up. She leaned to the side as the explosion tore a hole through it. Meanwhile, some nearby civilians heard the loud crash, guessing that a battle had broken out, so they gathered to cheer for Ryusei, who was busy gathering another explosion and challenging Jade to block this one too, her cold voice. She warned that anyone who disgraced the Empire would be punished and let the magical explosion fly away, but just then Ryusei sensed her magic disappearing suddenly. At the same time, a familiar face appeared as Ricky dove down with his massive sword to block her impending punch. Mr. Handsome told her to lower her voice and cast a powerful wind spell, forcing Ryusei to back off, and she glared at him angrily, and demanded to know who had extinguished her magical power. Ricky tried to take credit for it, but the Ice Girl didn't buy it, and said it felt like a heavier and more refined type of magic, and that was when she finally saw our boy, who was standing in the corner, exuding a protagonist aura. Her eyes widened as she realized Urion was the one who had stopped the spell and immediately got excited, telling him to step up and face her. But before she could charge in, he suddenly appeared beside her, stopping her in her tracks, while the teacher gently pats her head and tells her to save her strength for the real match, because this scuffle ends here. Muse is still in shock from the jump scare, but then grumbles that she'll leave right now and throw those thugs away from her, as she calls out that she will meet all of them in the friendly match, but next time, there will be no mercy. Ricky doesn't seem impressed. While Urion finally walks in and helps his classmate up, Jade uses her big brain and connects the dots, recalling how Chris's magic had also vanished earlier. He realizes that this feels exactly the same, while Urion just gives a confused smile. Meanwhile, Ricky notices something is off and realizes his sword is damaged. Even though Ryusei didn't use any magic when she hit it, he calls out to Urion that they absolutely cannot let their guard down, while our boy just makes a silly face and asks why. Then the representative group heads towards the exchange hall, and Baru immediately starts to sweat as he realizes these new students are on a completely different level, while Urion is the opposite, completely focused on food and almost drooling over the delicious meat. At that moment, a voice calls out and the senior student, Deo, steps up and greets Princess Surti. Surti lights up at the sight of him, and Deo's comments on how much he has grown. Mew narrates from the back that this guy is the strongest student in the entire Royal Magic School. Then Haiwan calls for everyone's attention and starts taking attendance from 3rd year to 1st year, as she confirms all 10 representatives are present. Dias politely greets her and she responds that she's expecting great things from him. Suddenly, a loud voice interrupts, making the former hero sigh at the absurdity about to begin. The speaker is Professor Kaiser from the Imperial School, stepping onto the stage and welcoming everyone. He begins a speech about the 7-year history of the tournament, but then he starts mocking that the kingdom can't even defend itself against a monster invasion. He keeps going on about how even a level 5 monster wouldn't be a challenge for the Empire, making the mages frown in annoyance. Finally, it's the kingdom's turn to speak. Jerry steps up to the stage with a mischievous smile as he starts talking about the legacy of the event, while the principal of the Imperial School claps for Kizar's speech and praises him for striking at the kingdom's pride. Kizar becomes arrogant, thinking he has crushed the kingdom's image, but Jerry has other plans, raises his middle finger without hesitation. He declares that the kingdom's students single-handedly defeated a level 4 monster, and that achievement will be recorded in the history books, still holding up his middle finger proudly. He adds that the Empire is currently on a 3-match losing streak, and if they can gather anything useful from the Magic Kingdom, they might one day qualify to become a real magic school. He flashes a mischievous smile and wishes everyone good luck. Meanwhile, the mages were thrilled and happy to have chosen Jerry as their teacher. Then the announcer continued. He claimed that the matches would start in 2 days, and until then, everyone was encouraged to mingle and have fun. Huon immediately added that since the boring speech session was over, it was time to eat, and Urion wasted no time rushing straight to the king crab table. A worried second-year student approached the professor. He admitted that he felt uncomfortable, explaining that the truly elite second-year students were still in the hospital and they were just substitutes. He added that they felt like a burden and weren't even sure what cheating tricks the Empire would use. The boy continued saying that since a level 4 monster had appeared, this event shouldn't be happening, but Urion simply replied that it meant they had to win. The second-year students felt shocked by that blunt answer. But then Sturdy and Ricky supported him, saying they had no plans to lose no matter how unfair the fight was. The twins were as excited as ever and shouted in agreement, while Haiwan exclaimed a few Shakespeare lines stating that true power doesn't come from status or position, but from inner will, reminding them that titles mean nothing and the only reason they were here was that they were excellent. Her words brought tears to the eyes of the self-proclaimed Jinx, and the teacher concluded by saying that she fully believed in her outstanding students. The scene then shifted to 2 days later, and it was finally time for the friendly competition to begin at the arena. The first round of the 8th Magic competition was announced as a live match between the 3rd-year students from the Royal School represented by Dias. He won calmly, telling the boy that he would be dead meat if he lost, but the boy confidently declared that he would win without any issues. Director Lee of the Empire School reassured his player Bogan Uzag, who looked like a high school version of Homelander, and said he could win if he played it right. The announcer explained that the first school to win 2 out of 3 matches would win the competition back in the Royal School audience box. Ji could hardly contain his excitement, and Principal Mages asked if this was her first time watching a friendly match, which she confirmed was true. Mages asked if she knew why they had won 3 years in a row. Ji guessed it was probably because their students were strong, but Mages said it was actually because Dais was born right on their land. Nusag greeted Nusag and asked how he was doing, to which the guy replied that he was stronger now, and immediately launched an outrageous stat buff when the match began. Normally a buff from 3 to 5 stats is manageable, but Nusag buffed all 8 stats at once. This caused blood to spurt from his nose as his body struggled to bear the pressure. Ji and Mages were impressed by that effort, but Dais revealed his ace card, the Scythe of Death, which could cut through magic. Realizing that he couldn't waste any time, Nusag lowered himself into a stance that looked like he was about to sprint in the Olympics as he aimed to finish the match with a decisive blow. Ricky raised an eyebrow at the strange position. Urion pointed out that it looked like something a ninja would do. Director Lee understood the confusion and recalled how this exact move had once caught him off guard. Nusag called it the charge stance and had created it to counter Dais, who had consistently beaten him for the past 2 years. Although the strength buff had enough power to take down Dais, Nusag knew it would only work if he got close enough in time to deliver the final blow. However, before the buff ended after 30 seconds, the director believed that Nusag would need 30 seconds to reach Dais. Nusag confidently told him that he only needed 5 seconds thanks to the charging technique in the arena. Nusag prepared to run like a cheetah, and believed that his buff gave him strength equal to or greater than a hero, meaning he would definitely win. Instantly, he charged straight at Dais. Dais watched with amusement as his opponent rushed in directly and calmly said that he wouldn't mind ending it early. The majors were closely watching and understood the method, called it a fearsome technique, but also admitted it still couldn't compare to Dao's. Before Nusag had a chance to react, the death scythe sliced through him easily, causing Director Lee to scream in panic, but Dios calmly stated that he had only severed the magic. He brought Nusag to his knees and claimed victory in the first round, telling Nusag that it was a good match while inside the Situation Room of the Empire team. Chaos erupted as their representative from Temu was swept away in less than 30 seconds, which they considered a complete humiliation and a matter of training skill. Officials emphasized that a 4th defeat against the kingdom was unacceptable, especially now when the kingdom was facing a monster invasion. This raised doubts about the empire and other nations. For this reason, a victory was mandatory if they wanted to maintain their prestige and lead. But with their trump card taken down so quickly, they now worried that the entire strategy could collapse. Director Lee began to think he had underestimated his opponent, but he reminded the council that the 1st and 2nd year matches were still left if they could win the next 2 rounds. A 3rd year loss wouldn't matter and victory could still happen. However, the cold old man responded that failure would have consequences, far beyond just blame or criticism. On the other side, Haiwan suggested that they just needed 1 more win to secure the championship. So, she urged the 2nd year students not to pass the weight of victory onto the younger ones. The team moved with purpose, and a student who looked like Ginga from Beyblade recalled surviving the battle with Riro and the promise made that day to never back down. Amid the announcements, the 2nd year leader of the Empire looked down at them and mocked that he hadn't expected this. The weak insects then asked where Riro had gone. Jinka Wannabe, whose real name is Ilal, retorted by insulting his mother. This made the next match much more personal. The announcer declared the 2nd match to begin while stirring up the moment. By stating that the Kingdom team was in the lead, the friendly match would determine whether the Empire could turn the tide, or the Kingdom would achieve complete victory. As the crowd erupted in support of their teams, both the Kingdom and Empire had high hopes from their players, while Empire Captain Wool Zara noticed that the Kingdom team lacked the Honor Class badge, making him aware that he was facing lower-tier students, something he considered a ridiculous insult. He repeated that they should go look for Laurel instead, and suddenly, a magical wind from him pushed the Kingdom team back. Ilal told his team to hold their ground as they carried the pride of the entire kingdom, but the Empire team found it quite amusing that a single gust had sent their opponents into a panic, while one of them reminded the others of Zahar's battle plan. The idea was to win with absolute ruthlessness and violence to create a show and wipe away the shame from their previous defeat under leader Zaha. Recalling that the scars on his face and his teammates came from Laurel last year, who had gone too far after winning by cutting their faces just to force them to look closely at his short sword. It had gotten so bad that the referee had to stop him. Since that day, Zaha and his team had trained hard for revenge against Laurel, but fate had an unpleasant twist, and they didn't even get a chance to face him. Instead, they were stuck fighting against students from lower tiers. The royal team moved into position with their mage safely placed while the Empire captain questioned whether this could really be considered a fight against children. Before casually walking through their formation unnoticed and completely catching them off guard, he groaned that he had trained just to crush Laurel, and now there was no way to restore his honor unless he got directly involved, then shouted that the royal bugs had no chance, and unleashed a magical wave that flattened the entire team to the ground. Ilal, although shaken by whatever force had just hit him, stood up and yelled for his team to stay alert and set up defenses, while Zaha questioned whether they really belonged to the same tier as him, because the power gap felt immense as the royal team regrouped. The mage informed them that he had escaped the blast by stepping outside the range. This sparked an idea in Alal's head that other Empire players wanted to join, but still stood outside because their coach had clearly told them to let the leader fight alone to create an impressive show. LL tried to uplift the team's spirit by saying they would still win, and the royal group noticed that Zaha was fighting alone. And assuming that he can only hit targets nearby, this makes him vulnerable to long-range attacks, so they prepare to shift into formation. Zaha finds this hilarious and suggests not attacking for 30 seconds if they think they can win in that time. This confuses the royal team, but the mage pulls them back to reality, and they charge forward with their plan. Before they can do anything to him, 30 seconds pass, and Zahar explodes with magical energy, wiping out the entire team in one blow. The mage calls out to them, but Zahar makes it clear that he is next by teleporting right in front of him in an instant, and shoves him away before he realizes what's happening. G and the students immediately recognize the skill gap, with G now worried for the students' safety. But the students decide to let Coach Haiwan handle the situation while she continues to observe in silence. Alal endures a brutal beating, while Zaha mocks him, saying that a weak bug like him has no chance against an honor class and should just beg for his life. But Alal surprises him by admitting that he might never defeat them, but adds that even if others mock him for trying, he refuses to give up. Since Alal's previous version that used to run away no longer exists, he says he is becoming someone who fears nothing, and if he runs away now, he will forever be weak for the rest of his life, so he decides that he will never back down again. But just as he reaches the peak of his speech, Zaha punches him straight in the face, making him slide across the hard floor like a stone, coldly telling him to die. He stands up again, bloodied, and Zaha screams that he just needs to break his legs so he can never get up again. But before he can throw another punch, he is stopped by a wave of superior magic that leaves him dazed. Our boy steps up now and stands between Elul and his opponent, ready to end the fight before it gets any worse. Ella looks up at Urion with a puzzled expression, while the professor yells at them to stop, as all the fighters have clearly fallen to the floor. The referee intervenes and declares the match over, causing the crowd to go wild with excitement as they finally get a victory. Zaha throws a punch at Urion, saying he only got lucky because the bell rang, and the big guy behind him supports him, saying it's clear the captain will win because his magical control is top-notch. With the rest of the group quickly agreeing, but Zaha glances at his hand and realizes that back then, he completely lost control of his magic. Ella sighs because she really didn't expect Urion to jump in like that, while Jade just nods as if she saw it coming and ultimately confirms her theory. The reason Zaha's magic disappeared is that our hero had immediately performed a magic nullification, which made Jade laugh strangely. Because that ability is truly amazing, Urion praised Ilal for not running away this time, and that was impressive. The elder took a moment to reflect and admitted that even if he didn't achieve much in the fight, he was still proud of it, but the adrenaline quickly faded, and he fell down like a sack of potatoes, making the onlookers anxiously call for an emergency doctor. Urion looked a bit worried. While those around him started murmuring about how the Empire really let things get out of control, he walked toward the seniors with a smile. But just as he was about to use his magic, the previously encountered fat noble began to act, demanding to know what he thought he was doing. Urion stated the obvious that he would heal them, but the fat guy immediately walked over and started yelling in his face. Because his healing had a limited number of uses, Urion tried to argue that not treating them could have serious consequences, but the fat guy kept going, saying the competition was more important than them, insisting that the doctors could handle it. As they rushed in and began chanting recovery spells while everyone else just stood by with serious expressions, Yuan looked like he was about to collapse. But then one of the doctors shouted that their recovery spells weren't very effective because the injuries were too severe. The senior healer quickly ordered an immediate transfer and realized that the Empire's game had definitely upgraded to cause such serious injuries. Unexpectedly, our little boy stepped up and surprised the senior healer, who told him to wait until they were finished. The noble looked on in disbelief. But Urion didn't care anymore, as he had promised himself to use this power to save people. The nobles could only watch in horror as Urion unleashed his ridiculous healing spell. Everyone healing around him was stunned, as the senior students slowly woke up while the chief healer immediately scolded his team for being negligent. The princess smiled at our little boy, and said she would be disappointed if he didn't heal them, while Mew jumped in, clearly trying to reach him, and Ricky still kept his clueless attitude in the back. All the first-year representatives lined up as if they were participating in a poster shoot, while the fat noble still looked like he was having a crisis in slow motion. Huan bumped into him and threw a sarcastic comment that the space here was too cramped. Her voice turned cold as she told him to get out, because this place was only for officials. The couch potato nearly fell to the ground but still tried to say that if they lost now, the responsibility would completely fall on her. Huan didn't care and said he could do whatever he wanted, calmly telling the announcer to start the match. The announcer looked a bit awkward but continued, declaring that the kingdom was more ready than ever. The professor tried to stop her from making things worse, but the damage had already been done. As Ryusei coldly declared that the Empire would not back down, their team immediately jumped into the arena. Baru stood there in confusion as he jumped down instinctively. While a bald guy named Ham immediately gets hyped up by Urion's healing power, the boring twin Jin thinks it looks extremely cool, and a guy with orange hair suddenly throws a jab at Ricky. Ryusei tells his team that if any of them mess this up, they should be ready to meet their ancestors. One of the doctors gently guides Alal, who still looks a bit sad, out of the field, but then Urion calls him back and tells him to leave the rest to them. This finally brings a smile to his face. Lady G teases Mages that he's turning into Hiwon, and Mages responds that this match could be the decisive one. GIE declares that their team clearly has the advantage, but she's still worried about the Empire's shady tactics. Mages nods slightly, sharing the concern, but brushes it off as he looks towards Hyun, who is rallying the team with one last motivational speech. She warns them that the Empire will definitely play dirty, but she ends with a sharp reminder that they have to win like they always do. With that, the group heads in with the energy of the main character. The host stirs up the crowd and announces that this match will decide the winner of the friendly competition, then calls the teams into the arena as the crowd goes completely wild. Ryusei mocks that he won't be able to run like last time, while Urion gives him the most innocent look he can muster. But just before things heat up, an NPC cuts into their moment. The guy holding the mic introduces himself as the secretary of the friendly competitions. He looks as shady as a cheap villain and starts rambling about how well the event has gone so far, but then suddenly drops a surprise that the final match has a brand new special rule. Miss G immediately calls the last-minute change suspicious, while the principal mumbles that the Empire probably pulled this trick because they know they will lose. The mages hold nothing back and bluntly call the Empire cowards for messing up what should have been a simple 5v5 match. The secretary pretends he's deaf and raises his hand to summon a giant tower from thin air, and then announces that the new objective is to pull the sword placed at the top of the tower. He explains that it has 5 floors, and each player will be assigned to one floor. Whoever wins their match will advance, and the more players win, the more control their team will have. Other school officials immediately argue that this wasn't mentioned before, and exposes this tactic to turn it into a one-on-one match. The Empire officials stand firm and pretend this is completely fair, while Haiwan just smiles as if she saw this coming, proudly announcing that her students are not the type to run away. The crowd falls into complete silence at this reaction, and the host officially starts the match. The referee then steps up and directs each player to their respective levels as they step into the shimmering magic door. One by one, back in the Empire's control room, the principal laughed as if he had just won the lottery, and asserted that their victory was nearly assured. He mocked our team, saying that the healer was useless in solo fights and that the twin sisters were only good when they teamed up, continuing to celebrate, as he bragged that their lineup was much stronger in one-on-one matches and even threw out some petty insults, hoping that the Kingdom players would fail miserably. Returning to the competition, Urion stepped into a bright room and had to shield his eyes from the light while his opponent was already waiting. It turned out to be Baru on another floor. The princess entered her part of the tower and calmly declared that all she needed to do was defeat Ryusei. And moving forward, Ryusei countered and called her arrogant for being overly confident, but Sturdy immediately shot back and told her to look in the mirror first. Elsewhere, Sia looked a bit sad being separated from her sister, while Ham interrupted her moment with a taunt. And as Little Toy finally showed up, Seiya silently promised Mayu that she would be back soon. After dealing with this pathetic guy, Jin confidently declared that Miu had a 0% chance of winning, but she just yawned, clearly unimpressed by the bald potato head. Another floor opened up for Ricky, who found himself in a beautifully decorated room that looked too luxurious for a battlefield. He began to wonder if the tower was linked to some other dimension, but just then, the arrogant kid from before appeared and immediately started throwing insults. But the Silver Knight completely overpowered him and asked where the stairs were, hitting a nerve because Hebe couldn't believe he was being overlooked, like someone no one remembered. He started taunting Ricky, but the knight calmly drew his sword and made a clean slash right through the kid's body while throwing a bit of heat at him. Hebe staggered slightly but suddenly laughed like a lunatic. Ricky's eyes widened as he realized his sword had just melted. The psychotic guy mocked him that he wasn't the only one with protection from a great spirit. His body was ablaze as he stuck out his tongue like a clown, declaring that they were about to have a lot of fun. But Ricky's expression remained unchanged. Back in the Empire's control room, the principal was still in high spirits, imagining the panic on the faces of the Kingdom team. The professor beside him was stroking his ego, but was clearly boiling inside. As he heard this for the 10th time, Fat Egg began to fantasize about the Kingdom being completely humiliated. If only the Empire students could climb the tower. Back in the arena, the director praised himself for predicting that the match would be decided by the first-year students. And he even did a little surveying beforehand. He admitted that this was a cheap tactic, but everything was fair in love and war. Then the announcer suddenly shouted that a player had reached the floor, which snapped the director out of his thoughts. He immediately thought it had to be one of the twins and bet on Jin because the older twin always tried to end his fights quickly. While Ham dragged it out for the thrill of the tournament, what surprised everyone was Urion showing up, but as soon as he realized no one was here, he decided to leave and come back later, Director Lee stood frozen in shock as if someone had insulted his grandmother, wondering what the hell was going on. Baru recalled the moment Director Lee provided him information about Urion and told him that the guy could only recover 3 times in a day, and since he had healed the second-year students, that left only 2 recoveries. He added that the healing power was pretty useless in real combat. That's why Baru was told to deal with the guy quickly downstairs before things got more complicated up top, or his abilities could become a bigger problem. Although the director called Urion a weak civilian, acting as if the mission would be easy, Baru wasn't falling for that overconfidence. He decided to treat the guy as a real opponent, stating he had no intention of letting his guard down because Urion didn't represent the Royal Magic School. Accidentally, he drew a pair of stone swords and clarified that he would go all out, but Urion casually suggested they should slow down. So it didn't get boring too quickly. Baru immediately dismissed that and said he aimed for at least 3rd place. To climb to the top, he had no time to put on some show, which made Urion recall everything that happened upstairs. He thought that 3rd place actually sounded perfect. Not too flashy, but still up there. He asked Baru if they were ahead of schedule going up. But Baru clashed the swords together like it was nothing and shouted that this was the perfect moment, he said. The foolish kingdom believed their students could win in a one-on-one match even when the odds were against them, but what they didn't realize was the Empire was more than ready. With a much better strategy and able to crush Urion's team thanks to lessons learned from previous failures, Urion ended his speech by confirming that if he went up now, he would still stand in 3rd place. Then the announcer explained that Urion from the Kingdom team was the first student to reach the top, but felt confused about why he was coming back down. Director Lee tried to guess whether Baru pulled him back or something, but deep down, the man was sweating bullets, realizing he had misjudged their son, and now all he could do was pray that the twins followed the script. On another floor, Jin tried to intimidate Mew by saying that both she and her sister had been completely analyzed as twin monsters, who had killed their own mother and had their magic powers sealed. He claimed that to use their magic, they had to be together, and this really excited Mew. Because the kid seemed to have done his homework quite well, Min said that he and his brother were the better twin pair and lit up his hand with magic. While Ham immediately sensed the same energy in his hands, it was clear that the 2 brothers could share their power even from a distance. He mocked that Mew and her sister lacked this connection and asserted that their defeat had been decided before the match even started. In another room, Heavy sneered at Ricky's attacks and told him to keep trying, and even if Ricky did so, his speed meant nothing as the hits left no marks, his wind sword melted, and Heavy asked what happened to that confidence. Then he kicked a firestorm straight at him and mocked him for how easy it was, while Ricky tried to block it with his shield. But just like Haiwan explained in class, the wind made the fire stronger and turned the shield into fuel, causing him to catch fire. While Heavy called him an idiot and said he would never win, she shared with Majas that she was worried about the students below and wondered what Urion had done after reaching the top. Majas thought his students might be losing due to the sudden rule change and said he might have to stop the match and sue the Empire. But when he noticed Haiwan's calm expression, his doubts began to fade. Iwan quietly told his students to win, and at that moment, Ricky escaped the flames while Heavy laughed at his struggle. While Ricky summoned the wind sword and sneaked up behind him, Fast Firebrat mocked him for not knowing the basic theory and boosted his fire by 200%. While declaring that he would melt his sword, blade, and bones, Ricky called upon the spirit for strength. Heavy mocked him and insisted that his fire could not be extinguished. But Ricky flew past him and landed multiple hits that extinguished the flames, leaving him dazed enough to fall into a memory. Where he saw his father again, he told his father that he had finally become a representative and planned to prove that their fire family was the strongest. But his father said there was no reason to prove anything because no matter how hard they tried, fire could never defeat wind. His father said that among the 4 spirits, only the wind and fire spirits supported humans, and between the 2, wind stood higher because the fire spirit Al had no love for them. Heavy realized that like his father, he had become a failure, and that their bloodline was destined to never be loved. He recalled how his father had spent his life serving the fire spirit and still fell into despair 3 years ago, and wondered if this was the feeling like crawling up on him now. While Ricky stood behind him with rage in his eyes, Ricky stared at him and asked coldly if he still wanted to try melting bones as he bragged earlier, while Jin threw a punch at Mew with a magical fist. But she dodged just in time and calmly told him that his punches were actually somewhat useful. Jin understood it as a taunt and tried to scare her again. He said that without her magic, she could only run and would soon tire out. He asserted that everything was going according to plan. Meanwhile, Mew called him boring for sticking to the plan and said that might explain why he wasn't popular, even with jokes. Mew was starting to find the battle boring, and wondered if now was the time to pull out her hidden card. Jin tried to ask her what she meant by not being popular, but she replied that he was not only bald but also blind. Just then, the door creaked open, and Urion walked in like a confused child, asking where his room was, completely surprising both of them as they realized he was the special admission student. Jin began to worry about Baharu, possibly losing to a guy who could only heal. Urion wondered if he had just ruined everything by walking in the middle of a fight and worried whether this violated any rules. Ma remembered a moment when her sister Sia told her a story about a prince on a white horse. Ma asked if he was some guy from the Empire, but Sia told her he was the kind of person who shows up when you're really in danger, and Mew asked if that meant he was strong, even though Sia said he was like a wild card, someone who risks everything for the one he loves. Mu wondered if that made him strong or just foolish, but figured it really meant he was brave, and now with Urion standing in front of her, she realized he was her white-haired prince. Urion ignored the drama and told her to go with him when she was done here, and to head out first so he wouldn't draw attention. Jin gritted his teeth about this new wild card and said everything would still go according to plan and that he would defeat both of them. While his body began to flare up with mana, Ham also sensed it and guessed that his little brother was telling him to finish quickly. While he sat threateningly on Sia's injured body, he said he had wanted to play around a bit longer, but since he had decided, he would finish it right now. Both brothers activated their powers, sharing all their strength, causing their facial features to distort, and made the veins in their heads bulge. Jin explained that this one heart, one body mode lasted 2 minutes and 22 seconds, which made them basically untouchable, so defeating both opponents was no big deal. He told them to attack at the same time, and Urion took that as an invitation, then brought down the power of the wannabe Megamind to 0, and the guy's face slowly returned to normal. Meanwhile, the two top students heard the rumble, and Ryusei thought the others had started a crazy fight, so she decided it was time for them to start too. And Surti agreed. The princess recalled that Ryusei was known as a rare talent in a century, who suddenly showed a glimpse of her special ability as a greeting. It was an explosion of a stream of magical power shooting forward, but Surti remained unaffected, creating a thin barrier with just her index finger. Ryusei asks Surti what she plans to do after graduation, and the question catches her off guard. She points out that Surti is part of the royal family, and wants to know how she imagines life will be after school, guessing that she might spend time relaxing with flowers in a luxurious castle garden. Surti stays silent while Ryusei clenches his fists, frustrated that the princess doesn't even need to graduate with honors since the royal family has secured her a comfortable future. Surti admits Ryusei has a point, as her brother will ascend the throne and she doesn't need high grades to prove anything. But since she refuses to be treated like a decorative plant, she sends a surge of power back, sending Ryusei flying straight into the wall as he stands up. She locks her gaze onto Churty's glowing pink finger. Churty prepares for another attack and states that she plans to use her power to save the world. Ryusei scoffs and tells her to focus on saving herself first, then charges another surge of power, saying this time she should go all out. The tower barely survives the chaos as the Imperial officials try to keep everything stable, mumbling that Ryusei should calm down. Since the entire structure relies on magic to stand, he thinks if she attacks with all her strength, this place would have collapsed already, and now it seems like he'll collapse before the castle does. Meanwhile, Jin is getting beaten up by Mew, who keeps throwing punches, while he subconsciously mumbles that everything is still going according to plan, but before she finishes him off, Urion starts to head outside, which prompts her to ask where he's going, and he replies that they need to go upstairs. She stops bothering Jin and walks alongside Urion while wondering how they will get upstairs, and he just hopes they'll randomly find an exit. If they keep wandering around, they'll both end up completely lost in the castle. At that moment, Director Lee is shocked again, as many students from the kingdom appear at the top and shout that they are sure there has been cheating and something shady is going on. Standing there are Ricky and Moo, now the second and third to reach the top, and Ricky announces that the sudden change in the rules feels like a setup to prevent them from drawing their swords. One of the guards nearby explains that no rules were changed, and states that the original requirement was always that only the captain could draw their sword, and doing so without one would lead to immediate disqualification. Ricky remains calm during this, although he isn't sure how long he can keep it together while hearing this nonsense, and Mew whispers anxiously that Sia still hasn't shown up and guesses she might have played her card and won the fight. Ricky starts to wonder why Urion hasn't reached the top yet when their enemy doesn't seem strong enough to hold him back for so long, and wonders how much longer he has to keep up the act before his master finally loses his cool. He looks down and sees Hai Nguyen standing frozen, and begins to wonder what kind of scene could scare her so much, while Hai Nguyen whispers level 4 to herself. When a new threat appears, our heroes must prepare to face it, while Saya seems a bit down because she hopes to reunite with her sister soon, who is still wandering somewhere in the castle, while she and Urion return to the very room where they started. Finally, our boy realizes they're going in circles, and at that moment, Mew starts to complain that her legs hurt from walking too much. She wonders if the layout is really that complicated, while Urion tries to reassure her that they'll figure it out soon. Mew then sneakily approaches him from behind and says that while she doesn't mind some alone time, the others might need support right now. Our boy agrees with her concern and guesses they might be the only ones stuck on the lower levels. Mew worries that if more players from the Empire show up, her sister will be in trouble. Although she's sure her sister has gone ahead without a better option, she suggests they should split up. That way, they'll have a better chance of finding the stairs, while Ryusei barely blocks the princess's attack and mocks her by saying all she's good at is running away. Surti counters that Ryusei's moves are too easy to read, so deep down, she thinks blocking her attacks might not be feasible. With no barriers, the blind girl provokes her to actually attack now, because she's ready to end this. The princess agrees, guessing the others are probably done, and then starts summoning another spell. Ryusei mocks her, saying she's just going to throw another spell. But she quickly corrects him that this time it's telekinesis, just as Ryusei gets trapped by magical chains, locking her in place. The princess tells her she's about to be folded up like an omelet. Ryusei stays calm as usual and calmly asks if this is the holy blessing everyone has been praising. She channels the spell into her legs and kicks one of the chains away, then unleashes a straight punch towards the princess. Surdy is caught off guard, having no time to dodge, and takes the hit, while Ryusei realizes she's free to move again. She looks a bit confused to see Surdy still standing there, and asks how she could withstand such a weak barrier. It shouldn't hold. She begins to wonder if this is because of that blessing. The scene shifts to a story explaining how humans were once so weak it was hard to believe, even as their civilization developed. Well, they always lagged behind other races, but one day, the heavens seemed to remember the existence of humans and granted one a powerful blessing. That power came to be known as the Divine Blessing, and has been passed down ever since, with Surdy chosen to bear it. Now Ryusei's legs suddenly feel weak as she realizes this is the truth and decides not to prolong it any longer. She charges in with an electrified punch that catches the princess off guard, but Surdy counters with her holy finger, controlling Ryusei's movements. Catching her completely off guard, Surdy started to sweat a bit as this close combat became rather uncomfortable and used telekinesis to push the blindfolded girl back. Ryusei's eyes widened as she was thrown away, and Surdy finally sighed in relief. She drifted into a memory where her brother told her that she didn't need to learn magic, but she had made her decision long ago, to use her power to protect everyone. As she lay in a pit, Ryusei asked if Surdy had abandoned her comfortable life the moment she received that power, and said that her situation wasn't any different from being thrown out into the cold with no choice. She jumped down and stated that was why she hated this power, and wished she could remain weak like a princess. Serenity disagreed, saying she wouldn't be swayed by such cheap words, and demanded they settle this once and for all. Ryusei was serious too, but just then, the door creaked open and distracted them. As she paused to check the new intruder, suddenly both started sweating buckets as a level 4 monster entered, and looking ready to end them if they made even the slightest wrong move. The scene shifted back to Haiwan and Ricky, just as darkness suddenly enveloped the sky, and Ricky went pale as a ghost with his mind foggy. It was said that the stadium became the quietest it had ever been, and at the center of that wicked magic, some bizarre images began to appear, a thick green mist covering the playground. As 3 level 4 monsters hovered in the sky above the castle, silence spread through everyone from students to royal officials, and even the cheering crowd below. The monsters were still far away, but instincts kicked in and nerves began to tighten. 2 minutes had passed since Haiwan first saw those images, and now they were hovering above the stadium roof. No one dared to breathe until suddenly, a plague appeared behind Ricky without making a sound, calmly walking toward the upper entrance of the tower before stepping inside. Haiwan appeared next and signaled for the plague to start moving. He dashed straight toward the lower entrance, and Hein Wen silently placed her trust in him. Then, she headed toward the upper entrance without hesitation. From somewhere, a familiar voice welcomed her, and she turned back to see someone she instantly recognized. Neely stood beside her, all smiles and full of energy, excited to see her again and calling herself a lovely member of the old hero team. She giggled and said fate was truly crazy to bring her back to He-1, and asked if he still remembered her. He replied that he would never forget her, but the mood shifted dramatically when Neely suddenly asked why she had been killed. Her voice became hollow while her face began to distort, and she questioned why she had been discarded to die when the group only had Hein Wen as the chosen hero. She continued to ask why things had turned out this way, repeating until her entire face melted away like wax, transforming into a rotting form. Instead, Neely accused her of harming the entire team and wondered how He-1 could keep living without feeling ashamed. She said if the others were gone, maybe the self-proclaimed hero should follow them down to the ground. He-1 didn't even blink. He saw through the trick and called out the illusion directly, confronting the depression and stating that their psychological games were as cheap as always. The fake image shattered and the depression fully emerged. Now reveling in Haiwan's mental strength, he noticed that she could still handle the trauma like a pro, and reminded her that she had also taken one of his arms and a leg, so it was no surprise she wasn't actually happy to see him. Huan looked at him with pure rage, and the depression understood his point. Chuckling, while admitting they weren't there to fight, he requested 5 minutes of silence and said he also wanted to wipe them out, to take revenge for having wiped out his other form, but he had been holding back until now. He-1. Piecing the parts together, he realized that since there were only a total of 8 level 4 monsters, they formed a closed but powerful team, so only 2 monsters could coexist. And the other one, the depressive twin, was already dead. She wondered who had destroyed the remaining one and guessed it could be their souls. He threw a punch and asked if the monsters came for a picnic instead of a fight when 3 out of the 8 had appeared, mocking them by comparing them to wild animals. But the depression didn't easily accept the insult. He warned her to speak respectfully and call them humans while cutting off any further provocations. He reiterated that they weren't there to fight, but clarified that the very statement was a threat, asking them to stand still for 5 minutes. After that, everything would end, and as the plague doctor's hand dripped, small drops turning into a virus, he explained that if they made any move, every student, teacher, and person in the audience would be wiped out. Haimwen recognized the tactic and noted that they were locking her down by using innocent lives as leverage, then added that for a bunch of monsters, their strategy felt too clean and organized. Ricky summoned every ounce of courage he could muster, and whispered a desperate plea to his soul for help, but his soul quietly sat on a flower and said she couldn't do anything right now, because in their last encounter, she had made a pact with the depression not to intervene, while the sickness glanced at the two girls and asked calmly, which one was the princess, because to him, all harmful creatures looked the same and he couldn't tell them apart. The blindfolded girl stepped forward without hesitation and said she was the princess, then asked what would happen if she went along. He smiled and said, harmful creatures born are liars. Liars as natural as they breathe. He admitted that no matter what she said, he would never be able to distinguish truth from lies, and Cersei's intuition confirmed that what was in front of them was indeed a level 4 monster, and the main reason for this chaos was to kidnap the princess. She realized they wanted her alive, because if the plan was to kill her, they wouldn't be wasting time. Ryusei told him that if he truly doubted their answers, he could just leave, confirm who the princess was, and come back later, because they would stand here waiting like saints. Disease disregarded that and shared a more ruthless idea, saying he would just chop both girls up and bring back half of each. Instead, both girls froze the moment they heard that, and the blindfold girl leaned in to whisper that they were now trapped between two choices. One was to fight together and hope they could shake off the monster and run, while the other option was to use her as bait and help the princess escape. And although it was ruthless, the second option gave them a better chance of success. Serdi proposed another plan, where she would surrender herself as the princess and let Ryuzi escape. But Ryusei immediately refused and said that was impossible. Princess Cersei said she felt the same and declared there was no backup plan left. So, the two girls agreed to a brief truce and stood side by side, ready to face the nightmare ahead of them. Urion began checking each door one by one, until he finally realized that the whole place had turned into an almost maze-like structure, as if something was trying to prevent him from entering certain rooms, but that only made him more curious, and with a menacing smile, he decided he would figure them out one by one, while the self-proclaimed plague doctor soared high in the sky, with the secretary standing there. Trying to figure out what nonsense was going on, he felt a bit frustrated wondering why the monsters had to invade just when he was in charge, and while he wanted to act immediately, the power of the towers had been snatched from him by those cursed monsters. At that moment, Mr. Disease unleashed a wave of devastating power that surprised the two girls with its strength, but Ryusei was reshaping. As she lifted Serdi in a complete princess carry to get her out of danger, she then told her it was time to get serious, and Serdi agreed as she activated her holy middle finger and cast a weakening spell on the monster. He asked if she seriously thought it would work, but Serdi told him not to underestimate her. While Ryusei charged his fist with power and unleashed a powerful attack ending with a massive explosion, Mr. Disease performed an Itachi-like motion and pointed aside, causing Ryusei's arm to immediately start disintegrating as she lost all feeling there. Serdi wasted no time, and used the strength of her thumb to block the incoming explosion, and asked Ryusei if she was okay. Miss Eyepatch just shrugged as if this level of injury was nothing, pointing to the large hole in the corridor that had now become their escape route. Moments earlier, Ryusei had made everything clear to Serdi that there's no way they can defeat this monster, and to be honest, the chances of both surviving are almost zero. That's why the plan has to be executed perfectly if they want even a small chance of survival. The first step is to create an escape route. When the door is sealed tight with dark magic, it means they have to make a new door themselves, back to the present. Ryus told her it was time for the second phase of the plan, but then she suddenly stopped, as both girls started bleeding from their noses and mouths. Mr. Disease just stood behind with a finger raised as the girls froze in place. The monster coldly declared that they were born to exterminate humanity and told the girls not to bother finding ways to survive in front of them, while the entire arena was sealed in a barrier, and the civilians were too terrified to even move. Even Magus felt the oppressive weight of this and guessed it must be a kind of psychological magic barrier. Seiya was quite smart and pieced together that the reason they locked down the stadium was to restrict one's movement. He began to question what kind of target would require such a meticulous plan and skill. Suddenly, she sensed something strange, and realized the monster was aiming downward, and Ricky sensed the same, guessing it must be targeting the princess, gritting his teeth. He turned to Haiwan and told her that there might be something more important than all these lives right now. He asked her what was more important to the kingdom, and said she needed to make a decision quickly. Ricky straightforwardly said he would even be willing to sacrifice himself for the kingdom, but one just smiled, and asked if he really thought she was such a useless teacher. This Silver Knight was taken aback, asking what she was doing, while one started charging up. With an explosion, Depression laughed and said nothing had changed and declared that her selfish actions only harmed those around her. But she just warned him to shut up unless he wanted to see her truly go insane. The monster stood still in place, as its head slowly slid off and fell to the ground, while one raised her sword and declared that the next on her list was Dr. Disease. The man continued to gather aura in silence while Depression lifted her head and admitted it was impressive that she still had this much power. Then he mocked her that she clearly had weakened over time, and now, thanks to her actions, all the remaining people here would face death. Dr. Disease began to activate the super virus he designed specifically to ruthlessly exterminate humanity. Haiwan mocked that if he really had a plan to end humanity, then he should at least bring along a level 5 monster. Then launched a special move and sliced both monsters into sushi, while striking a perfect pose at the end. The light in the arena moved violently as Haiwan chopped the monsters into pieces. And Ricky felt truly impressed by the raw power of the former hero, but his admiration was cut short when he saw blood dripping from her nose. And when she looked back, the monsters had restored themselves as if nothing had happened. Depression looked satisfied and said that even though her heroic power had faded, she still fought with courage. He emphasized that her strength was still not enough to kill them. Truly, and Mew felt nauseous watching her favorite healing magic being abused by these things. Haiwan refused to back down and said, they must be dumber than they look if they think she can't tear them apart again, and wipe the blood off her face. But the Plague Doctor had a different thought and laughed that she was the real fool here, because instead of playing Monster Hunter, she should find a way to minimize casualties and then unleash a virus straight into the arena with a swing of her hand. At the same time, the princess stood frozen as her chest tightened. She struggled to breathe and thought that something was definitely disturbing her lungs. Her body grew colder and everything felt off. Her gut told her that something was wrong with her heart while sickness was still staring with empty eyes. What do you say? Quickly realized and said that this attack wasn't meant to kill. Otherwise, they would have left a long time ago. She reminded Sturdy that the goal was to capture the princess alive. And that was the only reason they were still breathing. Eye Patch Girl quickly figured out and said they needed to change their plan. Before the monster realized who the real princess was, so she suggested being bait and letting Sturdy escape. She mentioned that there was no chance for both of them to survive. But those words shocked Sturdy. The memory pulled her back to a childhood moment when she watched her brother get through another grueling training session. She asked if he was going to the training grounds to practice again, and when he nodded, she said she was going too. Because she was jealous of him, he looked surprised and asked why she felt jealous when all he wanted was a few peaceful days off. She brushed off his words and excitedly asked what he was training in that day, hoping it was some awesome sword skills or impressive magic, and said she wanted to learn it too when she got to school. He cut off her excitement and told her to stop saying nonsense. Before he turned to the servant Jenny and asked if his bath was ready. When she nodded, he walked away without looking back at his sister again. Sir D remained silent while Melissa, another maid, gently tried to explain that the prince might just be tired. But the princess quietly asked if everyone would treat her differently if she scored high at the Magic Academy. She broke down crying and said she didn't want to live a life imprisoned forever in a castle like a princess in a tower. Lisa tried to comfort her and said that one day she would be able to live as she wanted. But until that day came, she had to keep trying her best over and over again. Then, her father had put an end to her dream of attending the magic school, and the rejection completely took her by surprise. Her father explained that there was no reasonable justification for her to enroll, mainly because he wants her to understand the value of the real world and absorb the art of freedom in a proper educational environment. She cried and said she wanted to protect her people with her own hands. And while Melissa gently reminded her about royal etiquette, the king stood firm and clarified that everyone in this world has a role, and her role is not to save people. Hearing that, she asked if it was because she was a girl, and the king replied that it wasn't a matter of gender, but because she is too weak, and if she steps into battle, her lack of strength will endanger others, completely undermining her idea of saving anyone. He continued that protecting people doesn't necessarily mean fighting, and that a strong monarchy combined with proper leadership can build a solid nation while still protecting its citizens. However, she remembered that her dream was not to grow up in a protected greenhouse. And recalling that her prayers had once been answered by receiving a divine blessing, she screamed that sacrificing others was unnecessary, and reminded herself that this blessing had given her the chance to leave that cage and ultimately protect everyone. So she decided that now she would protect each of them by herself. With that, she used her telepathy on the monster, by pointing her index finger at it and then realizing that it wasn't enough to push the heavy creature down to the floor. She added control force with her thumb to increase her power and tried to flatten it, but only made the monster kneel on one leg. Instead of completely falling down, she found that her skill wasn't enough, but she still refused to sacrifice anyone. Her face turned pale as Mr. Disease easily escaped the attack and stared at her before confirming that she was the princess. With her disguise revealed, Ryusei shouted for her to step back while the monster gestured toward its eyes, and in the blink of an eye, their eyes began to bleed so much that they went blind. Mr. Disease stood up and demanded the hand that had used the divine blessing be given to him because he needed it. Although Eye Patch Girl was now completely blind, she still told Sturdy to stand behind her. But before she could protect, the monster pointed at its head and knocked her unconscious without advancing. The prince was now terrified of what might have happened to Ryusei, and pleaded for her to respond as Disease slowly approached. The princess recalled her father's words about casualties and silently wished she hadn't stepped out of her greenhouse, and had never dreamed of being more than what she was born to be. She wished she hadn't wanted to be recognized or dreamed of power, but the cold disease reminded her that none of that ever mattered. Because death was coming for everyone regardless of the path she chose, she only saw darkness, until a sharp blue light suddenly flashed, and she found herself miraculously healed, now standing before her. Urion naturally asked her how she had managed to fight the monster alone, and wondered if it was because she was a princess, calling that quite impressive and solid. Clearly shocked, he asked how he got there and where the monster had disappeared to. Urion just smiled awkwardly as if nothing had happened, while a pair of smoking feet lay right beneath him. As he walked through the maze, our boy remembered this was the first time he had ever done this in his life. Finding it a bit hard to escape, he then saw a magical power shining in the distance and headed towards it, forcing his way inside. He was surprised to see a level 4 monster standing right in front of him. The disease began to scream about another bug crawling inside. But then he stopped in confusion because this room should have been sealed, while our boy approached the princess, who looked like she belonged in a zombie movie. He started calling out to her, wondering if she had just dozed off while the disease lurked behind him. Throwing hand signs like Naruto, the monster continued to try to curse Urion, who began to piece together that something big had just happened. As the disease continued to act, Urion turned around with fire in his eyes and asked if he had built this maze just to do this. The monster started to sweat as Urion continued, saying he rushed in thinking there was an event and repeated the question, but then Mr. Disease suddenly attacked. Urion didn't let that slide and unleashed a powerful punch that blew its upper half away in a massive explosion, wondering where this thing came from and realizing that, based on how ugly it was definitely also a level 4 monster. First, he summoned healing magic for the two girls and Surti immediately restored reality. She looked at him incredulously, trying to figure out when he had come here, but then turned back, worried about the monster. He pretended to be clueless as if he didn't know where it had gone while Ryosei also regained her senses. She was puzzled that all those serious wounds had been wiped away in just a second and exclaimed that she always knew our hero was the strongest, even though he insisted he was just a humble, ordinary guy. The blindfolded girl called it a trick and said he couldn't keep up the act any longer while the solid one remained completely silent, overwhelmed. Since this was the first time she experienced Urion's healing directly, she had seen it before, but experiencing it herself made her realize how many people he could save with this power. At that moment, she recalled her father's words that saving people didn't require physical strength. She looked somewhat sad. As she realized that Urion deserved her father's approval, but she was nowhere near close, he pulled her out of those thoughts and asked if she was holding back a level 4 monster by herself, which was truly remarkable, leaving her completely stunned. As her face turned bright red and her mind went blank from the sudden compliment, our boy wondered if he accidentally short-circuited her brain. Because he didn't really think before he spoke, Ryu quickly shifted the focus and asked about the divine blessing, which brought the princess back to reality. She activated it and calmed down when she saw it was still there, although Ryusei found it strange that a level 4 didn't take it when it could have easily done so. She started to suspect that he might have another goal, and Urion immediately said that could be the reason. The blindfolded girl called it a miracle that they were still alive, and guessed that the monster must have thought they were dead. He told them they should leave quickly, which she agreed to and pointed towards the hole in the wall. But then she turned back and asked who made this second large hole. The blindfolded girl, trying to convince herself that it was definitely the monster's doing, while Urion breathed a sigh of relief that he wasn't caught. Ryusei began to feel a bit disoriented as she held her head, thinking that she was definitely going crazy, which made sense since she had almost died and only survived thanks to heal. She tried to stay focused because the danger wasn't over yet, but then wondered how she was so calm while looking at the large hole. She asked Urion how he ended up here, and he replied that he just passed through it, which made her eyes widen. Surti guessed that he must have appeared after the monster left. Since he didn't encounter it unexpectedly, Ryu grabbed his shoulder, surprising him, and she said that was his weak point from the start. She yelled that it was normal to be panicking right now, but everyone was acting like nothing was wrong. She shook him like a blender, and demanded to know if he understood the kind of miracle he just performed. The princess also realized and acknowledged that even their fear had vanished. This meant that our boy's heal could heal even psychological wounds. At that moment, Ryusei yelled to the princess to look behind her as disease appeared out of nowhere. He warned her not to resist because her efforts wouldn't change anything and reached out towards her while she stood still. Ryusei tried to jump in but realized it was too late. However, Urion didn't let that slide and suddenly the monster's magic disappeared, leaving everyone stunned. Disease shouted at him for intervening, but Urion just stood there thinking that he was making it easier than before because he didn't want to break the tower. Although that didn't help much since the monster recovered quickly, Ryusei charged in while Disease mocked her that her attacks were useless. But she didn't care and let her punch fly, creating a massive explosion